I watched that video 3 times just to make sure I was not losing my mind. My mother practiced her sobs like she was rehearsing for a final scene, while my father mumbled, "We miss you," until the cadence sounded distinctively human. Beside them, my sister adjusted her expression, timing her choke up perfectly. They had no idea my doorbell camera captured the 12 minutes before anyone pressed the button, or that I was already waiting to open the door. My name is Harper Castillo, and for the last 2 years, I have lived my life behind a reinforced oak door in a quiet townhouse that smells faintly of cedar and lemon oil. My husband, Louis Nichols, and I bought this place specifically for its walls. They are thick. They are soundproof. They are the architectural equivalent of a boundary, something I never had growing up. When you spend the first 25 years of your life being the emotional sponge for a family that spills drama like cheap wine, you eventually develop a craving for silence that borders on an addiction. We moved here to escape the noise. We moved here to be boring. We moved here to be safe. That is also why I installed the camera. It was not paranoia. That is what I tell people. At least, in my line of work at the Crestwell Patient Response Agency, paranoia is just another word for unpreparedness. I spend 40 hours a week auditing medical claims, sifting through sob stories to find the fraud buried in the paperwork. I look for the inconsistencies in timelines, the signatures that do not quite match, the dates that shift by 24 hours to qualify for insurance payouts. My job is to verify reality against the story someone is trying to sell me. So, when we bought the townhouse, the first thing I did was install a high-definition video doorbell with a wide-angle lens and a cloud backup subscription. Louis teased me about it, saying we lived in a neighborhood where the biggest crime was failing to curb your dog. But he let me have it. He knew that for me. Seeing who was on the other side of the door before I opened it was not just a security measure. It was a psychological necessity. I needed to know that when I closed the door, the world stayed out. It was 4 p.m. on a Tuesday when the notification flashed across my phone screen. I was in the kitchen, making a second cup of tea, enjoying the rare silence of a work-from-home afternoon. Louis was in the study down the hall, typing away at a brief. The phone buzzed against the marble counter. A short, sharp vibration that sounded like an insect trapping itself against glass. Motion detected at front door. I frowned. We were not expecting packages. The mail carrier usually came at 11 in the morning. I picked up the phone, expecting to see a delivery driver dropping off a misdirected parcel, or perhaps a neighbor looking for a lost cat. I tapped the notification, and the screen went black for a split second before the feed loaded. The resolution was crisp, 1080p, sharp enough to see the dust motes dancing in the late afternoon sun. My breath hitched in my throat. The ceramic mug I was holding rattled against the counter as I set it down. My hand suddenly unsteady. It was them, standing on my front porch, framed perfectly by the camera lens, were my parents, Robert and Linda, and my younger sister, Chloe. They were not ringing the doorbell. They were not knocking. They were just standing there, clustered together like a group of actors waiting for the curtain to rise. I should have felt fear, or perhaps guilt. That old, familiar conditioned response that told me I was a bad daughter for moving away, for changing my number, for cutting off the financial drip feed 8 months ago. But I did not feel guilt. I felt the cold, clinical detachment of an auditor looking at a fraudulent file. I pressed the Live View button to hear the audio, turning the volume up on my phone. The microphone on these cameras is surprisingly sensitive. It picked up the wind rusting through the neighbor's maple tree. It picked up the distant hum of traffic, and it picked up my mother's voice, clear as a bell. "Is this too much?" my mother asked. She was wearing a beige cardigan I had never seen before, something loose and frayed that made her look smaller, frailer. She ran her hands down the front of it, smoothing the wool. "Do I look tired enough?" "Chloe, I do not want her to think I dressed up." "You look fine, Mom," Chloe said. My sister was standing to the side, checking her reflection in the darkened window of our front door. She adjusted her hair, pulling a few strands loose from her ponytail to frame her face in a way that suggested chaotic distress. "Stop fidgeting. If you fidget, you look nervous. You need to look broken." "I am nervous," my father grumbled. He was pacing the small width of the porch, looking at his watch. "How long do we have to stand here before we ring it? This is ridiculous. She's probably not even home." "She is home," Chloe said, her voice sharp. "Her car is in the driveway, and we wait until we are ready. We have one shot at this. Dad, if you mess up the line, she shuts the door, and we get nothing. Do you want that?" "No," Dad muttered. He cleared his throat, a harsh, guttural sound. Then, he looked at the door, straight at the wood, and his face transformed. The irritation vanished, replaced by a soft, wounded expression that I had seen 1,000 times before. "Harper, honey, we miss you. We just want to talk. Please." He stopped. He looked at Chloe. "How was that?" "Too stiff," Chloe critiqued. She reached out and adjusted his collar, making it look slightly askew. "Drop your shoulders. You are a grieving father who just wants his daughter back. Remember, you are not a bank manager. Try it again. Soften the 'we miss you.' Make it sound like you have been saying it to yourself for months." I stood in my kitchen, my hand gripping the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. I watched the screen as my father nodded, took a breath, and tried again. "We miss you, sweetheart," he practiced, his voice trembling with a manufactured emotion that was terrifyingly convincing. "We just miss you so much." "Better," Chloe said. She turned to Mom. "Okay, Mom, your turn. The tears. Can you do the tears?" "I need a second," my mother said. She closed her eyes. I watched her face scrunch up. I watched her breathing change. She began to hyperventilate. Short, shallow gasps of air. It was a technique I had seen her use to get out of speeding tickets, to get refunds at department stores, to guilt me into signing over my paycheck when I was 22. She opened her eyes, and they were glistening. She let out a choked, wet sob that sounded like pure heartbreak. "Oh, Harper," she wailed softly to the empty air. "Please, just open the door." "Good," Chloe said. "Keep that energy, but hold it back a little. Do not wail until the door opens. You want to look like you're trying to be strong but failing. That gets more sympathy." I felt a presence behind me. Louis had walked into the kitchen. He must have seen my posture, the rigid line of my spine, because he did not say a word. He just moved closer, looking over my shoulder at the phone screen. "What is this?" he whispered. "Rehearsal," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, hollow. "They are rehearsing." We watched in silence as Chloe took charge again. She positioned them. She moved Dad to the left, slightly behind Mom, so he would look like the silent, supportive patriarch. She moved Mom to the center, the focal point of pity, and then she positioned herself. She stood slightly off to the side, wringing her hands, practicing a look of hopeful desperation. "Remember the goal," Chloe said, her voice dropping lower. But the camera caught it. It caught every syllable. "We need her at the dinner. Grandpa is not going to sign anything unless the whole family is there. If she does not come to the legacy dinner, the deal falls through, and we are all screwed." I know, Dad snapped, his sorrowful mask slipping for a second. "Just ring the damn bell. Chloe?" "Wait," Chloe said. She reached out and pinched her own cheeks, flushing them red. Then she looked at my parents with a gaze so cold it could have frozen helium. "Listen to me. She is smart. She has been cold for 8 months. She is going to be suspicious. Do not get defensive. If she attacks you, let her. Take it. Swallow it." "I do not like lying to her," Mom whispered, though she was still maintaining the crying posture. And then came the line, the sentence that would sever the last thin thread of hesitation I might have had. Chloe looked at Mom, and her lip curled in a sneer that was invisible to anyone but the camera lens above her head. "We are not lying, Mom," Chloe said. "We are managing her. She just needs to believe we regret it. It does not need to be real. It just needs to work." The kitchen was silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the blood rushing in my ears. I stared at the screen. I stared at my sister, the golden child, the one I had protected on playgrounds, the one I had tutored through algebra, the one whose debts I had quietly paid off so she wouldn't ruin her credit score. It does not need to be real. Louis let out a long, slow breath. I felt his hand settle on the small of my back. It was a grounding touch. He was not trying to steer me. He was just letting me know he was there. "Harper," he said quietly. I did not look away from the screen. "Yeah." "Do you want them to step into our house?" Louis asked. His voice was level, devoid of the anger I knew he felt. He was a lawyer. He knew the value of keeping your head when the evidence was presented. "Or do you want them to step into your trap?" I looked at the timer on the video feed. They had been on the porch for 12 minutes. 12 minutes of staging, 12 minutes of directing, 12 minutes of premeditated manipulation. I tapped the screen. Save video. I waited for the loading circle to complete. Download to camera roll. Then I opened my cloud storage app. Upload. I tapped the file name, which was just a string of default numbers and dates. I deleted it. My thumbs moved across the keyboard with a steady, rhythmic precision. I typed in the new name, stark and professional, the kind of file name I would use for a flagrant insurance fraud case at work. Porch _rehearsal _0_1. I want them to step into the trap, I said. At that exact moment, the doorbell rang. The chime echoed through the house. Cheerful and bright, a stark contrast to the grim reality on the other side of the wood. I did not move immediately. I watched the live feed one last time. As soon as Chloe pressed the button, the three of them snapped into character. Mom slumped her shoulders. Dad clasped his hands in front of him. Chloe widened her eyes, summoning a look of innocent longing. "Showtime," I whispered. I counted. 1, 2, 3. I needed to make them wait. Not long enough to make them leave, but long enough to make them sweat. Long enough for them to wonder if their performance was being wasted on an empty house. 10, 11, 12. I smoothed down my shirt. I was wearing simple black trousers and a white blouse, my work clothes. I checked my reflection in the microwave door. My face was pale, but my eyes were dry. There was no anger there, not anymore. Anger is hot. Anger is messy. What I felt was cold. I felt the absolute zero of a relationship finally hitting rock bottom. 18, 19, 20. "Stay here," I told Louis. "Stay out of sight, but keep the door to the kitchen open." "I have your back," he said. I walked down the hallway. The floorboards did not creak. We had fixed that when we moved in. I reached the front door. I paused for 1 second, taking a deep breath, inhaling the peace of my home one last time before I let the chaos in. I unlocked the deadbolt. The click was loud. I opened the door. The performance began instantly. It was impressive, really. As soon as the light hit them, Mom let out a gasp. Tears, actual tears, spilled over her cheeks. She reached out for me, her hands trembling. "Harper," she choked out. "Oh, thank God. You are home." Dad stepped forward, his face a mask of weary sorrow. "Hi, sweetheart. We have been so worried about you." Chloe stood back, biting her lip, looking for all the world like the peacemaker caught in the middle. "Hi, Harper. We just wanted to see you. We miss you so much." It was perfect. If I had not seen the preamble, if I had not watched the 12 minutes of direction and critique, I might have crumbled. I might have let them in. I might have made tea. I might have apologized for being distant. I might have written the check they were undoubtedly here to ask for. But I had seen it. I stood in the doorway, my hand on the latch, blocking the entrance. I did not step back. I did not invite them in. I stared at my mother, watching the tears track through her foundation. "Harper," Mom said, her voice wavering when I did not immediately respond. "Please, honey, do not shut us out." I just cannot stop crying thinking about how much time we have lost. I tilted my head slightly. I offered a small, polite smile. It was the smile I gave to claimants who were lying about their back injuries. "Mom," I said. My voice was calm, conversational. "Yes, baby." She leaned in, hope flaring in her eyes. "Do you want to cry for the first time or the second time today?" The silence that followed was absolute. The sobbing noise caught in my mother's throat. She blinked, the tears stopping as if someone had turned off a faucet. "What?" "The crying," I said, keeping my tone light. "I was just wondering if this is the official performance, or if you are still rehearsing, because the practice run you did 5 minutes ago was a little stiff, but this is much better. The lighting really helps." Dad's brow furrowed. "Harper, what are you talking about?" "We just got here." "Did you?" I looked at him. "Because my notification log says you have been standing on my porch for 12 minutes. Chloe went still. I saw the calculation happening behind her eyes. She looked at the doorframe, she looked at the potted plant, and then her eyes drifted up. I raised my hand and pointed a single finger at the small, black, sleek device mounted next to the doorframe. The blue ring of light was glowing softly. "It has a wide-angle lens," I explained, helpful as a tour guide. "And a high-fidelity microphone. It starts recording the second it detects motion. Not just when you ring the bell. It picked up everything, the blocking directions, the line readings, and especially that part where you told Mom that it does not need to be real." "Chloe." I looked at my sister. Her face had drained of color. The innocent, hopeful look had vanished, replaced by the deer-in-headlights panic of someone who realizes the curtain has been ripped down while they are changing costumes. "Harper," Chloe stammered, "that you are misunderstanding. We were just nervous. We wanted to say the right thing." "You wanted to say the effective thing," I corrected. "There is a difference." My mother looked from the camera to me, her mouth opening and closing. The tears on her face were drying, sticky and forgotten. "You recorded us. You stood on my property," I said. "You staged a play on my doormat. Of course I recorded it. I have it saved. I have it backed up. And I have named the file." Dad stepped forward, his face flushing a dark, angry red. The sorrowful father act dropped instantly. "Now you listen here. Harper, this is exactly why we have problems. You are always keeping score. You treat your family like criminals. We came here to make peace." "You came here because of a deadline," I said. I remembered the snatch of conversation from the video. "Grandpa is not going to sign anything unless the whole family is there. You came here because you need something from Grandpa Everett, and you cannot get it without me." They froze. The accuracy of the strike hit home. "I am not letting you inside," I said. "I am not letting this performance into my house. My home is real. What you three are doing, that is fiction." "We need you at the dinner," Chloe said. Her voice hard now, stripping away the sweetness. "The legacy dinner, Sunday. Grandpa is making decisions about the estate. He wants everyone there. If you are not there, he is going to think we drove you away." "You did drive me away," I said. "If you do not come," Mom hissed, panic creeping into her voice. "You are writing yourself out of this family, Harper, for good." I looked at them. I looked at the desperate greed in their eyes, barely concealed behind the mask of familial duty. I thought about the file on my phone. Porch_rehearsal_0_1. I thought about the years of manipulation, the guilt trips, the money that vanished into thin air. I could close the door. I could lock it. I could never see them again. But if I did that, they would spin the story. They would go to that dinner and tell Grandpa that I was cruel, that I was unstable, that I refused to see them. They would win the narrative, and they would probably win whatever financial game they were playing with his estate. Lewis had asked if I wanted them to step into my trap. Closing the door was not a trap. It was a retreat. I smiled again. It was not a nice smile. "I will be there," I said. They slumped with relief. Chloe let out a breath, looking triumphant. She thought she had won. She thought the threat had worked. "Sunday," I said. "I will be there, but I'm coming alone. I am driving myself, and I am not coming to follow your script." "Just be there," Dad grumbled, turning away, unable to look at the camera anymore. "That is all we ask." "Oh, I will be there," I promised. I reached for the door handle. "And just so you know," I added, my voice dropping to a whisper that I knew they and the camera would catch perfectly, "I am not coming to apologize. I am coming to watch the sequel to what I just saw on my porch." I slammed the door. I threw the deadbolt. The sound was final. I stood there in the hallway, my heart hammering against my ribs. I looked down at my phone. The app sent a notification. Motion stopped. They were gone, but the file was there. I stared at it. I was going to that dinner, but I was not going as the daughter they could bully. I was going as the witness they never expected. You might think that a person who installs a high-definition surveillance camera to catch their own parents rehearsing a manipulation tactic is paranoid. But paranoia implies a delusion. What I have is data. I have 30 years of field notes on the Castillo family dynamic, and every single entry points to one conclusion. I was bred to be the supply line. My sister, Chloe, was bred to be the consumer. It started long before I had a bank account. It started with the emotional currency of our household. In the Castillo architecture, Chloe was the load-bearing wall, and I was the spackle used to patch over the cracks. If Chloe broke a vase, it was an accident caused by high spirits. If I broke a vase, it was carelessness. If Chloe screamed because she did not get the toy she wanted, my mother would turn to me, eyes pleading, and utter the sentence that became the soundtrack of my youth. "Harper, be the bigger person. Do not be selfish. We need peace in this house." Do not be selfish is a dangerous thing to teach a child. It sounds like a virtue, but in the wrong hands, it is a gag order. It taught me that my needs were secondary to the ambient noise level of the living room. It taught me that saying no was an act of aggression. By the time I was 18, I had perfected the art of the preemptive apology. I apologized for taking up space. I apologized for having an opinion. And eventually, I started apologizing with my wallet. When I left for college, I thought I was escaping. In reality, I was just expanding the service area. The requests started small, innocuous enough that refusing them felt petty. A $20 Venmo here for a textbook Chloe forgot to buy. A $50 transfer there because Mom left her card at the grocery store and was standing at the checkout line. Humiliated. I always sent it. I always added a little love you note with the transfer, and they always replied with a heart emoji. But never a repayment. It is ironic, really. Considering what I do for a living, I work as a senior claims auditor for the Crestwell Patient Response Agency. It sounds bureaucratic and boring, and it is, but it is also a masterclass in human deception. My entire job is to look at a story and find the hole in it. I spend 8 hours a day staring at dual monitors, cross-referencing medical codes with billing statements, looking for the phantom ambulance ride or the physical therapy session that happened on a Sunday when the clinic was closed. I am trained to spot the tells of fraud, the slight hesitation in a recorded statement, the timeline that requires the claimant to be in 2 places at once, the emotional deflection when a hard question is asked. At work, I am a shark. I have saved the agency nearly $2 million in fraudulent payouts in the last fiscal year alone. But when it came to my family, I was not an auditor, I was a mark. I checked my skepticism at the door along with my coat. I let them commit emotional embezzlement. And I signed off on the invoices because I thought that was the price of being a good daughter. Lewis Nichols was the one who finally forced me to look at the ledger. Lewis is a man of absolutes. He is a contract lawyer who believes that ambiguity is the enemy of happiness. When we started dating, he was baffled by my family interactions. He would watch me take a call from my mother during dinner, watch my face fall, watch me excuse myself to transfer money, and then watch me return to the table with a forced smile. "Why do you do that?" he asked me once, 3 years ago. We were at a steakhouse, celebrating my promotion. Do what I asked, feigning ignorance. Pay them for the privilege of making you miserable, he said. He did not say it unkindly. He said it like he was reading a clause in a bad lease agreement. Harper, that was the third time this month. Your sister is 26 years old. Why are you paying her phone bill? She is between jobs, I recited. The script automatic. It is just a loan. She will pay me back when she gets her commission check. Louis just looked at me. He took a sip of his wine and said, Okay, let's track it. Joss. Track what? The loans. If it is a loan, it implies repayment. Let's just keep a log. For science. I agreed because I wanted to prove him wrong. I wanted to prove that my family was just going through a rough patch, that they were not parasites. So, we created a spreadsheet, a simple, shared Google sheet, date, amount, reason, repayment status. We kept that log for 2 years. I remember the night I finally looked at the total sum. It was a Tuesday in November, raining hard against the windows of our old apartment. I opened the file on my laptop. The scroll bar on the right side of the screen was distressingly small. I scrolled down, and down, and down. Emergency car repair for Chloe, $400. Mom's dental copay, $250. Dad's investment opportunity short-term, $1,000. Chloe's rent just this once, $1,200. Birthday dinner, I paid for everyone $380. The list went on. Hundreds of entries, thousands of excuses, and in the column marked repayment status, the cells were almost entirely empty, a desolate wasteland of red text. I highlighted the amount column and clicked the sum function. $32,450. I stared at the number. $32,000. That was a down payment on a house. That was a student loan payoff. That was a luxury car. That was my life. My labor, my time, siphoned off in $20 and $50 increments until it became a mountain of lost potential. But the money was not what broke me. You can lose money and make it back. What broke me was the realization of why I gave it. I gave it because I thought I was buying their affection. I thought I was purchasing my seat at the table. I thought that if I was helpful enough, generous enough, successful enough, they would finally look at me the way they looked at Chloe. The breaking point came 2 weeks after I saw that total. I had a health scare, a lump in my breast. It turned out to be a benign cyst, but for 4 days, I was living in the cold, gray terror of the unknown. I was waiting for biopsy results. I was a wreck. I called my mother on a Thursday afternoon. I needed her. I did not need money. I did not need a favor. I just needed my mother to tell me that I was going to be okay. Mom, I said, my voice shaking. The doctor called. I have to go in for a biopsy tomorrow. I am scared. Oh, honey, she said. Her tone was distracted, the sound of a television blaring in the background. I am sure it is nothing. You are young. Listen, since I have you on the phone, your father and I are in a bit of a bind. The water heater is acting up, and the guy says it is going to be $800 to fix it. Do you think you could Venmo that over? We can pay you back when the tax refund comes? I stopped breathing. The phone felt like a piece of ice in my hand. I just told you I might have cancer, I whispered. I know, she said, impatient now. And I said it is probably nothing. Don't be dramatic. Harper, we have no hot water. Can you send it or not? I did not send the money. I hung up the phone, and then I sat on my kitchen floor and cried for an hour. Not because of the biopsy, but because the illusion had finally shattered. They did not care if I was okay. They only cared if I was solvent. That was the day the bank of Harper closed. The reaction was immediate and vicious when I politely declined the water heater request and the subsequent request for Chloe's networking trip to Miami. The atmosphere shifted. I was no longer the good daughter. I was suddenly cold. I was changed. I do not know what has gotten into you, my father told me over the phone, his voice dripping with disappointment. You used to be so generous. Now you act like you are better than us. Then came the whisper campaign. This was Chloe's specialty. She weaponized concern. She did not tell people I was mean. That would make her look bad. Instead, she told our extended family aunts, uncles, cousins that I was struggling. My cousin sent me a text. "Hey Harper, Chloe mentioned you are under a lot of stress at work and having some anger issues. Just wanted to say we love you and hope you are getting help." I was furious. I wanted to scream. I wanted to send screenshots of the spreadsheet to every single person in our contact list. But Lewis stopped me. "Do not engage," he said. "If you defend yourself against a lie, you just validate the lie. They are rewriting the narrative because they lost control of the asset. You are the asset." Lewis sat me down one evening, about 6 months ago. He poured 2 glasses of wine and placed a folder on the table. "I am not going to tell you to cut them off," he said. "That is your decision. They are your blood. But I am your husband. And I have a duty to protect our future." "I know," I said. "I stopped sending money." "It is not just the money. Harper, it is the emotional toll. You look like a ghost every time you get off the phone with them. So here is my proposal. A boundary agreement." He slid a piece of paper across the table. It was not a legal document, but it was formatted like one. It listed 3 simple rules. 1, no financial transactions of any kind. No loans, no gifts disguised as loans, no covering the bill. 2 calls are limited to 15 minutes. If the conversation turns toxic, the call ends immediately. 3, if they gaslight you, if they rewrite history, we acknowledge the reality to each other. We do not swallow the lie. "I will not stand by and watch you be hollowed out," Lewis said softly. "I love you too much to let them turn you into a husk. If you want to keep seeing them, that is fine. But we play by these rules, or I step in." I signed the paper. It felt more binding than our marriage license. It was a declaration of independence. For the last 8 months, we stuck to the plan, and the silence from my family was deafening. They stopped calling as much when they realized the ATM was out of order. They stopped inviting us to casual dinners when they realized I would not pick up the check. I thought we had reached a détente. I thought we had established a new normal where we just drifted apart. But then came the legacy dinner. The invitation had come from Grandpa Everett directly, or so I thought. A text message from a number I did not recognize, signed simply, Grandpa. He wanted the whole family together. He had big news. He wanted to see his girls. I had been suspicious. Grandpa Everett is 82. He barely knows how to use a remote control, let alone text. But the emotional hook was deep. Grandpa was the only one who had never asked me for a dime. He was the one who used to sneak me candy when Mom put me on a diet at age 10. He was the one who told me I was smart. So I agreed to go. And that agreement set the stage for the performance on my porch. Now, standing in my hallway, watching the digital file named Porch_rehearsal_0_1 sync to the cloud. The pieces of the past snapped into a horrifyingly clear picture. The conditioning, the do not be selfish mantra, the guilt trips. It was all preparation. They had trained me to be compliant, so that when the big ask came, whatever this legacy dinner was really about, I would roll over and sign on the dotted line. They needed the version of Harper who paid the bills and apologized for existing. They did not know that version of Harper was dead. She died the day she realized her cancer scare was less important than a water heater. The woman who replaced her was a Tier 3 auditor for the Crestwell Patient Response Agency, and I was done paying for the damage they caused. I looked at the time on my phone. I had 4 days until Sunday. 4 days to prepare. My mother had spent 12 minutes rehearsing a lie. I was going to spend the next 96 hours preparing the truth. To understand why I stood behind that door and refused to open it, you have to understand the mathematics of my breaking point. It did not happen overnight. It happened exactly 2 years ago, on a humid Thursday afternoon, inside the interface of a mobile banking app. We need to talk about Grandpa Everett. In a family of performative artists, Everett Castillo was the only person who lived in reality. He was a carpenter by trade, a man who understood that if you did not measure twice, You would inevitably cut once and ruin the whole project. He built the deck on my parents' house. He paid for my first semester of college when my financial aid paperwork mysteriously vanished from the kitchen counter, an event I later suspected was sabotage by my mother to keep me close to home. 2 years ago, Everett's health began to decline. It was nothing catastrophic at first, just the slow, grinding erosion of age. His knees went, then his hip gave him trouble. The doctor recommended a specialized physical therapy regimen, 3 times a week, to keep him mobile. Medicare covered some of it, but the copays were adding up, and he needed a ramp installed at his front door. I convened a family meeting. We sat around my parents' dining table. I had prepared a spreadsheet, because that is how I function. I laid it out clearly. Grandpa needed support. Instead of scrambling every time a bill came in, I proposed a Grandpa Care Fund. It would be a joint checking account. I would contribute 60% because I had the higher salary. Chloe, who was working a brand ambassador gig at the time, would contribute 20%. Mom and Dad would cover the remaining 20%. Transparency, I had said, sliding the printouts across the mahogany table. We all have login access. We all see the statements. The money is strictly for Grandpa's medical needs and home modifications, nothing else. I expected resistance. I expected my mother to haggle over the percentages or for Chloe to claim poverty. Instead, they agreed instantly. That is a beautiful idea. Harper, my mother had said, her eyes misty. It is so responsible. We should have done this years ago. Chloe nodded enthusiastically. Totally. I can set up the auto transfer tonight. I want to help Grandpa. I should have known. The speed of their agreement was a red flag the size of a billboard. In my job, when a claimant agrees to a settlement figure without negotiating, it usually means they know they are not entitled to a dime and want to cash out before we find the evidence. But I was blinded by the relief of shared burden. I thought, finally, we were acting like a team. I opened the account the next day at First National. I handed over the debit cards. I set up my direct deposit. Every 2 weeks, $500 left my paycheck and landed in that account. For 6 months, I felt good. I felt like a dutiful granddaughter. I saw the balance grow in the monthly summaries. I glanced at $3,000, $5,000, $8,000. I stopped checking the line item details because the top line number looked healthy. That was my negligence. An auditor who does not audit is just a spectator. 6 months into the arrangement, the bill for Grandpa's physical therapy package came due. It was a bulk payment of $2,400 for 20 sessions. I was at work, sitting in my cubicle, eating a sad salad for lunch. I logged into the banking portal to initiate the wire transfer to the clinic. I clicked on Accounts. I scrolled down to Joint, Everett Care. I blinked. I refreshed the page. I thought perhaps the bank's server was glitching, or maybe the Wi-Fi in the office was lagging. The balance was not $8,000. It was not $10,000. The balance was $42.16. I sat there, frozen, the fork halfway to my mouth. A cold sensation started at the base of my spine and radiated outward. It was the physical sensation of being robbed, a violation that felt like a punch to the gut. I clicked on Transaction History. The screen filled with red text. Withdrawal. ATM. Casino Morongo. $400. Transfer to Zelle. C. Castillo $800. Debit purchase. Sephora $212. Debit purchase. Delta Airlines $650. Transfer to external actee. Crypto King $3,000. The list went on. Page after page of siphoning. It had started small. $20 here for gas, $50 there for groceries. Then, about 3 weeks prior, the dam had broken. The transfers became aggressive. Someone had drained the account with the frantic energy of a looter smashing windows before the police arrived. The user ID associated with every single transfer was CCASTILO02. Chloe. I did not scream. I did not cry. I went into a state of hyperfocus. I downloaded the entire transaction history as a PDF. I printed it. The printer hummed rhythmically, spitting out 12 pages of evidence. I stapled them together. I walked out of the office. Telling my manager I had a family emergency, it was not a lie. The emergency was that I was about to commit a felony if I did not get answers. I called Chloe from the car. "Hey, sis," she answered on the second ring. She sounded cheerful, breathless. I could hear music in the background, something upbeat and expensive sounding. "What is up?" "I am actually at brunch. Can I call you back?" "Where's the money, Chloe?" I asked. My voice was low, devoid of inflection. "What money?" She laughed, a nervous, tinkling sound. "You sound intense. Did something happen?" "The Grandpa Care Fund," I said. "I am looking at the statement. There is $42 in it. Where is the $11,000 that should be there?" There was a pause. The music in the background seemed to get louder. "Oh, that," she said, her tone shifting from confused to dismissive. "Okay, do not freak out. I moved it." "You moved it?" "Yes, I moved it to a short-term investment vehicle," she said, using words she clearly did not understand. "The interest rate in that checking account was garbage. Harper, 0.01%. It was losing value against inflation. I put it into this crypto opportunity my friend told me about. It is going to double in 3 months. Then I will put it back, plus the profit. I am doing Grandpa a favor." My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "You spent $600 at Delta Airlines. Is that an investment vehicle? You spent $200 at Sephora? Is that inflation hedging?" "I had to book a flight to a networking event for the investment," she snapped, suddenly defensive. "And I needed to look professional. You have to spend money to make money." "Harper, God, you are so small-minded. This is why you are still working a 9 to 5. "Put it back," I said. "Right now, transfer it back." "I cannot," she said. "It is illiquid. That means it is tied up. Just wait a few weeks. It will be huge. You will thank me." I hung up. I did not want to hear another word. I drove straight to my parents' house. I knew Chloe would call them immediately to spin the narrative, to set the stage before I arrived. I needed to get there while the evidence was still warm. When I walked into their house, the smell of pot roast filled the air. It was a sickeningly cozy scent. My parents were at the table. Chloe was not there, but her presence hung in the room like a gas leak. Mom looked up, her face already set in a grimace of preemptive disappointment. Dad was staring at his plate, pushing peas around with his fork. "We heard," Mom said before I could speak. I slammed the stack of papers onto the table. It landed with a heavy thud, rattling the silverware. "Did you hear about this?" I asked. "Did you hear that she spent $3,000 on crypto and $600 on a plane ticket using the money meant for your father's hips?" "Harper, lower your voice," Dad said, finally looking up. "The neighbors." "I do not care about the neighbors," I shouted. "I care about the fact that I have been pouring half my paycheck into a black hole. She stole it. That is theft. That is elder abuse." "It is not theft," Mom said sharply. She stood up, wiping her hands on a napkin. "She explained it to us. She is trying to grow the capital. She made a mistake with the timing. Maybe, but her heart was in the right place. She wanted to surprise us with a bigger return." I stared at her. I looked at this woman who had given birth to me, and I felt like I was looking at a stranger. "Mom, look at the statement. Sephora, casinos. That is not investing. That is partying." "She is young," Mom cried out, throwing her hands up. "She is under so much pressure. She felt bad that she could not contribute as much as you. So she took a risk, and now you are stomping in here, waving papers around, acting like a prosecutor. You are trying to criminalize your own sister." "I am not criminalizing her," I said, pointing at the papers. "The numbers are criminalizing her. The bank record is criminalizing her." "You always do this," Dad said. He shook his head, looking disgusted. "You always have to be the right one. You always have to make us feel small. So Chloe messed up. We will fix it. We will figure it out. How? I asked. How will you fix it? Do you have $11,000 lying around? Because the bill for the physical therapy is due on Monday. Who is going to pay it? Silence. The heavy, suffocating silence of people who have no plan but refuse to admit they are drowning. Well, Mom said, her voice dropping to a whisper. You have savings. Harper. You and Lewis. You are doing so well. Can't you just cover it for now, until Chloe's investment pays out? The room spun. I actually felt gravity shift. You want me to pay twice? I asked, my voice barely audible. You want me to replace the money she stole, so that she does not have to face the consequences. She is not a thief, Mom screamed. It was a primal sound. She is your sister. Why are you so calculated? Why is everything a transaction with you? You count every penny. You keep score. It is ugly. Harper, it destroys the family. I am calculating. I laughed. It was a dry, jagged sound. I am the one who put the money in. She is the one who took it out. And I am the villain because I noticed. You are the villain because you have no mercy, Mom spat. Because you care more about being right than being kind. Grandpa would be ashamed of you. He would want Chloe to have a chance. That was the dagger. Bringing Grandpa into it. Using the man whose money they had squandered to guilt-trip the only person trying to protect him. I looked at my father. Dad. You are seeing this, right? You see what she did. Dad took a long sip of his iced tea. He did not look at me. Your mother is right. Harper, we need to handle this internally. Do not make a scene. Just fix it. For Grandpa. Fix it. The motto of my existence. Fix the mood. Fix the finances. Fix the mess Chloe made so no one has to feel uncomfortable. I looked at the stack of papers on the table. The evidence was irrefutable, and it meant absolutely nothing. Facts do not matter to people who are emotionally committed to a lie. They did not care that the money was gone. They cared that I had exposed the loss. In their twisted logic, the crime was not the embezzlement. The crime was the audit. I realized then that if I stayed in that room for one more minute, I would scream until my throat bled, or I would surrender, and I was done surrendering. No, I said. Mom blinked. What? No, I repeated. I am not covering it. I am not fixing it, and I'm closing that account tomorrow. You can't, Chloe said. I turned around. She had walked in through the back door. She was wearing a new leather jacket probably purchased with the debit card. She looked defiant, her chin raised. Grandpa needs that money. Grandpa needed the money I put in, I said, staring her down. He does not have it anymore. You spent it. If the bill does not get paid, tell the clinic to call you. Give them your crypto wallet address. See if they accept future returns as payment. You are such a bitch, Chloe sneered. I hope you feel good about yourself, abandoning Grandpa like this. I am not abandoning Grandpa, I said. I am abandoning you. I walked out. I did not take the papers. I left the 12 pages of shame right there on their pot roast dinner. I walked out to my car, got in, and locked the doors. I sat there for 5 minutes, just breathing. My hands were shaking so hard I could not put the key in the ignition. I realized that for the first time in my life, I was the bad guy. I had refused the role of the savior. I had refused to be the ATM. And because of that, in their eyes, I was the one who had broken the family covenant. I picked up my phone. I opened my contacts. I scrolled to Mom, block caller. I scrolled to Dad, block caller. I scrolled to Chloe, block caller. It was not a strategic move. It was not a punishment. It was a tourniquet. I was bleeding out, and I had to stop the flow. I started the car and drove home to Louis. I told him everything. He did not say, "I told you so." He just held me while I shook. The next day, I went to the bank. I removed my name from the joint account. I told the teller I wanted nothing to do with it. She looked at the balance and the transaction history. and gave me a look of pity that made my skin crawl. "Do you want to report fraud?" she asked quietly. I hesitated. I had the pen in my hand. I could have done it. I could have filed a police report. I could have sent Chloe to jail. Or at least to court. "No," I said. "Just get me off the account." That was my last act of mercy. And they never thanked me for it. Instead, they spent the next 2 years telling anyone who would listen that I had stolen Grandpa's money and cut them off out of guilt. They took my exit and weaponized it, but I learned something valuable that day. I learned that in the Castillo family court, the truth is inadmissible evidence. If I wanted to win, if I wanted to survive, I could not just be right. I had to be undeniable, and now, 2 years later, standing in my hallway with a hard drive full of data and a credit report loading on my husband's tablet. I knew one thing for certain. I was never going to pay for their mistakes again, but they were about to pay for mine. Silence has a texture. For the first few weeks after I blocked their numbers, the silence felt heavy, like a wool blanket soaked in water. It was suffocating. I kept checking my phone, waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for a police cruiser to pull up to my driveway, waiting for a process server to hand me a lawsuit for emotional damages. I woke up at 3 a.m, heart racing, convinced I had missed a crisis, but then the water evaporated, the blanket lifted, and for the last 8 months, the silence became something else entirely. It became luxury. Louis and I moved 3 weeks after the bank account incident. We did not move far, just 2 towns over, to a townhouse complex with a gate code and a homeowners association that strictly regulated the height of hedges. It was a sterile, manicured kind of peace, and I loved it. We built a life that was aggressively boring. We started grocery shopping on Sunday mornings. We cooked dinner at home. We joined a gym where I ran on a treadmill for 45 minutes at a time, sweating out the cortisol that had been accumulating in my bloodstream for 3 decades. My therapist, doctor, Aris, told me that I was going through withdrawal. She said I had been addicted to the cycle of crisis and rescue, that my brain had been wired to expect a catastrophe every Tuesday. "You are learning to live without the adrenaline," she told me during one of our Thursday sessions. "It feels empty right now because you are used to the house being on fire. But this is not emptiness. Harper, this is stability." It started to show in my face. My skin cleared up. The dark circles under my eyes, which I had assumed were genetic, began to fade. At the agency, my colleagues noticed, my manager, a woman named Sarah, who usually only spoke to me to question my audit timelines, stopped by my cubicle one morning. "You seem lighter," she said, holding her coffee mug. "You used to jump every time your cell phone buzzed. Now you just let it go to voicemail. New yoga class." "Something like that," I said. I did not tell her that the reason I no longer jumped was that I knew the people who used to make me jump could no longer reach me. The blockade was holding, but there was a leak in the dam. Grandpa Everett. Blocking my parents and Chloe was an act of survival. Cutting off communication with Grandpa was the collateral damage that kept me up at night. He did not have a cell phone. He relied on the landline in his small bungalow, and lately, due to his hip, he relied on whoever was there to hand him the receiver. For 8 months, I tried to call him. I had a schedule. I would call on Sunday afternoons, when I knew my parents were usually at church or out shopping. I would call on Wednesday mornings, every single time. The phone was answered, but never by him. "Hello," Chloe's voice, bright and guarded. "I would like to speak to Grandpa," I would say, keeping my voice flat. "Oh, hey Harper," she would say, as if we were just casual acquaintances. "He is actually sleeping right now. He had a rough night with the leg pain." "Okay, tell him I called." A week later, my mother answers. "Hi, Mom. Is Grandpa there?" "Harper," she would sigh, the martyr tone heavy. "He is watching his show. I do not want to disturb him. He gets so confused when he has to pause the program. Why don't you try later?" I tried later. "He is in the bath. He is eating. He left his hearing aid out. He will not be able to hear you." It was a blockade. It was a systematic isolation campaign. They were gatekeeping a lonely 82-year-old man because he was the only leverage they had left. They knew that if I spoke to him, if I told him about the money, about the theft, about why I really left, their narrative would collapse, so they kept him in a bubble. They probably told him I was busy. They probably told him I was working too hard to call, or worse, they told him I did not want to talk to him. That thought was the acid that ate through my newfound peace. I started sending letters. I wrote them by hand on yellow legal pads, folded them into envelopes, and mailed them to his address. I wrote about my new house. I wrote about Louis. I wrote, "I miss you, and I'm not angry at you." I never got a reply. I suspected the letters were being intercepted at the mailbox, filtered out like spam. Then came the text. It was last Tuesday, 4 days ago. We were cleaning up after dinner. Louis was loading the dishwasher, humming something off-key. My phone was on the counter. It buzzed once, a single, short vibration. I glanced at it. It was a number I did not recognize. Area code 312, a local number. But not one in my contacts. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and picked it up. "Harper, it is Grandpa. I am using Mrs. Higgins' phone from next door. She brought me cookies. Can you come Sunday, legacy dinner? I have something to say in front of everyone. Please, I need you there." I stared at the screen. The text was typed with difficulty. There were double spaces, no punctuation at the end, and it was signed simply, Grandpa. "Louis," I said. He stopped loading the plates. "What is it?" "It is Grandpa," I said. He texted me from the neighbor's phone. Louis walked over. Drying his hands, he looked at the message over my shoulder. He read it twice. "Mrs. Higgins," Louis said. "That is the lady with the terrifying chihuahuas." "Right." "Yes, she lives next door to him. Legacy dinner," Louis read aloud. He frowned. "That sounds branded. That sounds like something Chloe named." "It does," I admitted. "But the text is from him. I have something to say in front of everyone. That sounds like he is planning something. Or he is scared." I sat down on one of the bar stools. The peace of the last 8 months suddenly felt fragile, like thin ice. If I go, they will be there, all of them. It is a trap. "Louis, they want to corner me." "Then we do not go," Louis said immediately. "We invite him here. We go pick him up." "I cannot just pick him up. He can barely walk. And if I show up at his house, Chloe or Mom will be there. It will be a scene on the front lawn. They will call the cops and say I am harassing them." "So what is the alternative?" "I go to this dinner," I said slowly. "I walk into the lion's den." Louis took the phone from my hand and set it face down on the counter. "If you go, I go. I am not letting you walk into that room alone. You know how they operate. They will swarm you. It is 3 against 1. "I want to handle the blood part first," I said. "This is my family mess. I do not want them to target you." "They target me anyway," Louis reminded me. "I am the controlling husband in their story. Remember, I might as well earn the title." He was right, but there was something else bothering me. I looked at the calendar on the wall. It was a habit from my job, always check the date. Always check the timing. "Look at the date." "Louis," I said. He looked. "Sunday is the 26th. "The 26th, I repeated. "End of the month." In the world of finance, the end of the month is a sacred and terrible time. It is when quotas are due. It is when mortgage grace periods end. It is when short-term loans roll over. "You think this is about money," Louis stated. It wasn't a question. "It is always about money," I said. "Grandpa says he has something to say. But why now? Why a legacy dinner? That sounds final. That sounds like a will reading. Or an estate transfer." Louis finished. My stomach turned. "If they are trying to get him to sign over the house or the remaining assets, they might need a witness or a notary or they need unanimous family consent," Louis said. "Some trust structures require all beneficiaries to be present or to sign off on major changes." "That is it," I said. The realization clicked into place like a deadbolt. They do not miss me. They need me. I am a signature to them. I am a hurdle they have to jump over to get to the finish line. I felt a surge of anger, but it was different from the anger I used to feel. It was not hot and teary. It was cold. It was the anger of an auditor finding a forged signature. I am going, I said. But I am not going to eat. I am going to inspect. Okay, Lewis said. We go, but we have rules. We take 2 cars. If things get heated, you leave. You do not ask for permission. You just walk out, and I will be right behind you. Agreed. I replied to the text. I will be there. Grandpa, love you. I did not text my parents. I did not text Chloe. I let them sweat. I knew they would be panicking. They needed me there. But they did not know if their blockade had worked too well. They didn't know if I had even heard about the dinner. That explained the charade on the porch. They must have realized that simply inviting me might not work, or maybe Grandpa told them he invited me. And they needed to do damage control before Sunday. They needed to soften the target. They needed to show up, cry, apologize, and guilt-trip me into attending, just to make sure I would walk through that door compliant and ready to be manipulated. That was why they came to my house on a Tuesday afternoon. That was why they rehearsed the tears. That was why Chloe coached my father on how to sound heartbroken. They were not rehearsing an apology. They were rehearsing a transaction. I looked at the ring notification on my phone again. The image of them standing on my porch, 12 minutes before they rang the bell, it was pathetic. It was desperate. And it was the most useful piece of intelligence I had ever received. They thought they were the directors of this play. They thought I was just an actor who had forgotten her lines. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet street of our new neighborhood. Lewis, I said, do we still have that portable scanner? The one you use for site visits? Yes. It is in the garage. Why? Put it in the trunk of my car. I said, if there is paperwork at this dinner, I am not just reading it, I am copying it. The 8 months of peace were over, but I was not going back to the chaos. I was bringing the order with me. I was going to the legacy dinner, and I was going to serve them a course they were not expecting. I was ready for Sunday. I was ready for the tears. I was ready for the, we miss you. Because this time, I knew exactly what the ticket price was. Later, when I replayed the porch footage with the volume up, a low buzzing sound cut through the tension. It was coming from Chloe's purse. It was a persistent, aggressive vibration against the leather. Chloe jumped. She glanced at me, then at her purse. I have to take this. It is work. Go ahead, I said, gesturing to the driveway. Work is important. She stepped back, moving down the porch steps, putting distance between us. She pulled the phone out, looked at the screen, and her face went pale. She answered it, turning her back to me, hunching her shoulders in an attempt to create a privacy shield. But sound travels, and I have spent 3 years training my ears to hear the whispers in recorded witness statements. I focused. I tuned out the wind. I tuned out my father's heavy breathing. I am working on it, Chloe hissed into the phone. Her voice was sharp, frantic. No, she is being difficult. She hasn't fully agreed to the script yet. Pause. The person on the other end was shouting. I could hear the tinny distortion of a male voice. I know, Chloe whispered, shouted back. I know the deadline is Monday morning. I know. If we do not get the signature by then, the rate lock expires. I get it. Just give me 24 hours. I will get her there. I will make sure she signs. Yes, yes, I promise. She hung up. She stood there for a second, composing herself, taking a deep breath before turning back around. She put on a smile that was so brittle it looked like it would shatter if a breeze hit it. Sorry, she said, walking back up the steps. Client crisis. You know how it is. I do know how it is, I said. My blood was running cold. But my mind was firing on all cylinders. Deadline is Monday morning. Rate lock expires. Signature. Grandpa did not have a rate lock. Grandpa owned his house outright. He had paid off the mortgage in 1998. I remembered the party they threw. There was no reason for a rate lock unless someone was taking out a new loan, a big one. Who was that? Chloe, I asked. Just my manager? She lied. We have a brand activation launching next week. Since when do brand activations have rate locks? I asked. Chloe froze. Her eyes widened. I didn't say rate lock. You did, I said. I heard you. If we do not get the signature by Monday, the rate lock expires. Who is refinancing? Chloe, is it you? Is it Mom and Dad? Or are you trying to refinance Grandpa's house? You are hearing things, Mom interrupted, stepping in front of Chloe like a human shield. Stop interrogating your sister. You are obsessed with conspiracies. I am obsessed with facts, I said. And the fact is, you are panicked. You are on a deadline, and you need my signature, which means whatever you are doing, you cannot do it without me. Why is my name still on the deed to the guest cottage? Or did Grandpa put the property in a trust that requires all grandchildren to consent to a lien? You are delusional, Dad said. But his voice lacked conviction. He was looking at his shoes again. It is relevant, I said, because if you are dragging me to this dinner to use me as a co-signer on a loan I do not know about, you are going to be very disappointed. Just come to the dinner, Chloe screamed. The mask was gone completely now. She looked feral. Just come to the dinner and stop being such a paranoid freak. It is for Grandpa. Do you not care about him at all? I care enough to not let you leverage his home for your investments, I shot back. I felt a presence behind me, a warm, solid weight. Louis had stepped up to the screen door. He did not open it. He did not speak. He just stood there, visible through the mesh. A 6'2" silent objection to their bullying. He crossed his arms. My father saw him. He took a step back. Dad was not a fighter, and he knew Louis was a lawyer who knew where the bodies were buried, metaphorically speaking. We are done here, I said. I will see you on Sunday, 5 o'clock, my car, my terms, and if I sniff even a hint of a loan application, a notary public, or a piece of paper that needs a signature, I am walking out, and I am taking Grandpa with me. You would not dare, Mom whispered. Try me, I said. You spent 12 minutes practicing on my porch. You should have spent that time practicing your financial disclosures. Because I am not coming as a daughter. I am coming as an auditor. You are ruining this family, Mom said, her voice trembling with genuine hate this time. You are hateful. I am informed, I said. There is a difference. Let's go, Dad muttered, grabbing Mom's arm. She is not going to listen. Let's just go. Sunday, Chloe said, pointing a finger at me. Do not be late, and do not wear that smug look. I will wear whatever I want, I said. They turned and walked down the steps. It was a retreat, disorganized and angry. Mom was still muttering. Chloe was checking her phone again, probably texting the mysterious man with the rate lock. Dad looked like he wanted to dissolve into the landscaping. I waited until they reached their car. I waited until the engine started. I waited until they backed out of the driveway, tires screeching slightly on the asphalt. Only then did I step back and close the door. I locked the deadbolt. I locked the handle. I engaged the security latch. I turned to Louis. He was already holding his tablet. Rate lock, Louis said. Monday deadline. They are borrowing against the estate, I said. They are trying to pull equity out of the house before Grandpa dies. Or maybe they are tricking him into signing a reverse mortgage so they can get the cash now. And they need you, Louis said. Why? Because Grandpa put the house in a living trust 5 years ago. I remembered. After Grandma died, he wanted to protect it. He made me, Chloe, and himself the trustees. He said he didn't want Dad to gamble it away. So they cannot encumber the asset without your signature, Louis concluded. Exactly. I looked at the empty porch through the peephole. They were gone. But the threat was not. They were cornered animals. And on Sunday, they were going to try to bite. I told them I would bring evidence, I said softly. You did, Louis said. What evidence? I walked over to the hallway table where my purse sat. I pulled out my work ID. I pulled out the encrypted flash drive I kept on my keychain, the one I used to store depositions and audit trails. I am going to pull the property records, I said. I am going to pull the trust documents, and I'm going to download that video from the porch. I am going to burn it all onto a drive. And then, I said, looking at my husband, I am going to the legacy dinner, and I'm going to serve them the one thing they cannot digest. The truth, Lewis asked. No, I said. Consequences. The door was locked, the deadbolt engaged, and the porch was empty, but the house still felt invaded. My mother's perfume, a cloying floral scent that she applied with the subtlety of a crop duster, lingered in the hallway. I walked past it, straight into the living room where Lewis was already sitting at the dining table, his laptop open, his face illuminated by the blue light of the screen. I need your phone, I said. Lewis handed it over without asking why. I placed it next to mine. I opened the Castillo family group chat. I had left the group 8 months ago, but I had never deleted the history. Digital hoarding is a side effect of my profession. You never know when a 2-year-old text message will become the pivot point of an audit. I scrolled back. It was like descending into a cave of emotional radioactive waste. April, 3 years ago, Mom Harper. We are a little short for the anniversary dinner. Can you cover the wine? It is just $200. July, 3 years ago. Chloe. Hey sis, my car broke down. I need $500 for the tow. Mom said you would help. December, 2 years ago. Dad. We are thinking of upgrading the heating system. It is an investment in the house value. Your share would be $1,500. I started screenshotting, one by one. The camera shutter sound on my phone was a rhythmic, mechanical judgment. I was not capturing these messages to hurt my feelings. I was capturing them to establish a pattern of solicitation. In fraud investigations, we call this establishing the baseline. The baseline of the Castillo family was that Harper was not a person. She was a liquidity provider. What are you looking for? Lewis asked. He was typing on his own laptop, his brow furrowed. Intent, I said. They are acting desperate. Desperate people do not just ask. They take, I want to see if they laid the groundwork for this financial crisis earlier, and I just missed it. I am running a comprehensive risk assessment, Lewis said. His voice was calm, the tone he used when reviewing a particularly messy contract. I am pulling your credit reports from all 3 bureaus, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. If they are trying to refinance a loan that involves you, your Social Security number has been pinged in the last 30 days. Do it, I said. I watched him navigate to the credit monitoring portal. We paid for the premium subscription, the kind that alerts you if someone sneezes near your credit score. Louis typed in the password. The 2-factor authentication code pinged my phone. I read the numbers out loud. 4920555. The screen loaded. A wheel spun for 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. Okay, Lewis said. Score is 780. That is good. No hard inquiries for mortgages in the last 6 months. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. So they haven't applied yet. Wait, Lewis said. He leaned closer to the screen. Scroll down to Open Accounts. I moved around the table to stand behind him. I looked at the list. Mortgage, student loan paid off, car lease, Visa, Amex, and then, at the bottom of the list, a line item I did not recognize. Lakeside Credit Union, Platinum Rewards Visa. Opened October 14th of last year. Balance, $4,850. Status, past due. My stomach dropped. It felt like I was in a free fall. I do not bank with Lakeside, I whispered. I have never banked with Lakeside. Lewis clicked on the details. The address on file popped up. It was not our townhouse address. It was not our old apartment address. It was 104 Maple Avenue, my parents' house. They opened a credit card in my name, I said. The words tasted like ash. They used my social security number. They used their address so I would not see the statements. And they maxed it out. Identity theft, Lewis said. He did not say it with anger. He said it with the cold finality of a judge delivering a verdict. This is a felony. Harper, this is federal wire fraud. I stared at the screen. $4,850. It was not a fortune. But it was enough to destroy a credit score. It was enough to prove that they did not see me as a daughter. They saw me as a resource to be harvested. Check the transaction history, I said. My voice was shaking, but my hands were steady as I reached for my notebook. Lewis clicked deeper. The list of purchases appeared. Best Buy $1,200, a new TV, likely, grocery store $300, liquor barn, $200, cash advance, $500. They are living on my credit, I said. They are eating and drinking and watching movies on a card they opened by forging my signature. This explains the desperation, Lewis said. Sitting back, the bill is past due. If it goes to collections, you find out they need cash to pay this off before the debt collectors call you. Or they need something bigger, I said. Chloe said rate lock. You do not need a rate lock to pay off a $5,000 credit card bill. You need a rate lock for a mortgage. I am checking the county clerk's office, Lewis said. He opened a new tab. He navigated to the public records search for the county where my parents and grandpa lived. He typed in Castillo, Everett. The search results populated. Most were old. The original deed from 1975, the release of the mortgage from 1998, the transfer to the living trust 5 years ago. But there was a new entry, filed 8 days ago. Petition for conservatorship. Petitioner Robert and Linda Castillo. Subject, Everett Castillo. Oh my God, I whispered. They are trying to have him declared incompetent. Look at the filing type, Lewis pointed out. Emergency temporary conservatorship. They are claiming he is unable to manage his financial affairs. If they get this granted, they control his assets. They control the house. They can leverage it, sell it, or borrow against it without his permission. But the trust, I said. I am a trustee. They cannot touch the house unless I sign off, even if they are his conservators. The trust document supersedes the conservatorship for the assets held within it. That is why they need you at the dinner, Lewis said. The puzzle pieces slammed together. They are trying to get control of him legally, but they are blocked by the trust. They need you to sign a waiver, or they need you to sign an amendment to the trust removing yourself as a trustee, or they need you to co-sign a loan that validates their authority. The deadline, I said. Chloe said the deadline is Monday. The hearing for the conservatorship must be on Monday. Click on the case number, I directed. Lewis clicked. The court docket appeared. Hearing scheduled Monday, January 27th, 9 o'clock in the morning. Family Court Division 4. They want me to sign something on Sunday night. I realized. They want to walk into court on Monday morning and say, look, the whole family agrees. Even the other trustee signed off. Give us the house. I felt a surge of nausea. It was so calculated. It was so predatory. They were going to strip an old man of his autonomy and steal his home. And they were going to trick me into holding the knife. I need to call Corinne, I said. Aunt Corinne was my father's younger sister. She was the black sheep of the family. Because she had committed the ultimate sin, she became a successful contract lawyer in Chicago and refused to lend anyone money. We had not spoken in a year, mostly because I had been isolating myself from the entire bloodline, but she was the only one who operated in the realm of logic. I dialed her number. It rang 4 times. Harper. Her voice was crisp, professional, but surprised. Is everything okay? No, I said. I found a credit card in my name that I did not open, and I just saw a conservatorship filing for Grandpa on the county docket. Ah, Corinne said. The single syllable carried a weight of knowing. So you finally checked the records. You knew? I suspected, Corinne said. I visited Grandpa 2 weeks ago. He was lucid. Harper. He was telling me about his garden. He knew who the president was. He knew what year it was. But Robert and Linda were hovering. They kept trying to answer for him. When I left, Linda asked me if I thought Dad was slipping. I told her he was sharper than she was. She did not like that. They are trying to take the house, I said. They are in debt. Harper, Corinne said bluntly. Robert made some bad calls in the market. Chloe has been bleeding them dry. They see Dad's house as a giant piggy bank. It is worth $500,000, free and clear. If they get control, they can cash out, refinance, and pay off their debts. But the trust is in the way. And I am the roadblock, I said. You are the fail-safe, Corinne corrected. Dad put you on that trust for a reason. He knew Robert was weak. He knew Linda was enabling. He trusted you to hold the line. They invited me to a legacy dinner, I said. Sunday night. Do not sign anything, Corinne commanded. Her lawyer voice was in full effect. Do not drink the wine. Do not eat the bread. And absolutely do not sign a piece of paper, no matter how much they cry. I am not signing, I said. I am building a case. Good. Send me what you have, Corinne said. The credit report fraud, that is leverage. If they push on the conservatorship, you threaten to file a police report for identity theft. That will stop them cold. A conservator cannot have a pending fraud investigation against a family member's assets. I will see you on Monday. Aunt Corinne. I asked. If you survive Sunday, she said darkly, I will be at the courthouse on Monday to represent Dad. I filed an objection this morning. But you need to hold the line at that dinner. If they get to him emotionally before Monday, my objection might not matter. I hung up. I looked at Louis. We have a plan. We need a folder, Louis said. He stood up and went to our filing cabinet. He pulled out a crisp, red accordion folder. It looked like a warning sign. We spent the next 3 hours assembling the weapon. Exhibit A, the ring footage. I burned it to a USB drive. I also saved a copy to my phone for easy playback. Exhibit B, the credit report. Louis printed it out. He highlighted the fraudulent account in yellow neon. Exhibit C, the transaction history. The list of liquor store runs and Best Buy purchases. Evidence of lifestyle spending, not necessity. Exhibit D, the conservatorship filing. The proof that their family unity was actually a legal coup. Exhibit E, the trust deed. I dug it out of my own safe. It clearly stated that no loans could be taken against the property without the unanimous consent of all trustees. When we were done, the folder was thick. It sat on the dining table like a loaded gun. Rules of engagement, Louis said. Looking me in the eye, he placed his hand on top of the folder. We do not lose our temper. We do not scream. Screamers look unstable. We want to look like the only sane people in the room. Agreed, I said. Cold, professional. If they cry, we wait, Louis continued. If they yell, we lower our voices. If they lie, we pull a paper from the folder. We do not argue with them. We correct the record. And Grandpa? I asked. We get to Grandpa, Louis said. Our primary objective is to physically shield him. Once we are in that house, one of us is by his side at all times. We do not let them isolate him in a bedroom to sign papers. I looked at the folder for years. I had been terrified of my family. I had been terrified of their disapproval, their anger, their ability to make me feel small. I had let them steal my money and my self-worth because I thought the only way to survive was to appease them. But looking at the evidence of their betrayal, the credit card fraud, the legal ambush of an old man, I realized that I was not afraid anymore. You cannot be afraid of people you no longer respect. They want a legacy dinner, I said, picking up the folder. I am going to give them a legacy they will never forget. I checked the time. It was 11 o'clock at night. Sunday was 3 days away. I am going to file a police report for the identity theft, I said suddenly. Louis looked at me. Now before the dinner. No, I said. I am going to fill out the paperwork. I am going to have it ready, sealed in an envelope. I will put it in the folder. If they push Grandpa, I pull it out. It is the nuclear option. Stop the conservatorship, or I mail this to the district attorney tonight. Louis smiled. It was a sharp, dangerous smile. That is my girl. We went to bed, but I did not sleep immediately. I lay there, listening to the hum of the HVAC system, thinking about the woman I used to be, the Harper who apologized, the Harper who sent Venmo transfers to keep the peace. That Harper was gone. In her place was a witness, and on Sunday, I was taking the stand. Sunday arrived wrapped in the heavy, humid blanket of a Midwestern summer evening. I pulled my car up to the curb of Grandpa Everett's house at exactly 5 o'clock. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of stillness that usually implies peace. But today it felt like the held breath before a thunderstorm. I did not park in the driveway. The driveway was already full of cars, my parents' SUV, Chloe's leased convertible, and a few sedans belonging to aunts and cousins. I parked 3 houses down, facing the exit. It was a tactical choice. If I needed to leave, I was not going to be blocked in by a family member who lost their keys or wanted to talk. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I wore a navy blue dress, tailored and sharp, no jewelry except my wedding band. I did not look like a woman who was struggling, as my sister had been telling people. I looked like a woman who was about to conduct a hostile takeover. I grabbed my purse, feeling the weight of the red folder tucked inside against the leather. It was heavy with evidence. I walked up the sidewalk. The transformation of Grandpa's modest bungalow was jarring. Usually, his yard was a simple affair grass that was cut a little too short and a few hydrangeas struggling against the heat. Today, it looked like a spread in a lifestyle magazine. String lights were draped across the oak trees in the backyard, casting a warm golden glow over the lawn. A long farmhouse-style table had been rented and set up on the grass, covered in a crisp white linen tablecloth. There were floral centerpieces, expensive ones, with peonies and eucalyptus. A catering van was parked in the side alley, and servers in black vests were circulating with trays of hors d'oeuvres. It was beautiful, and it made my skin crawl. This was not Grandpa. Grandpa drank iced tea out of mason jars because he liked the glass, not because it was trendy. Grandpa ate barbecue on paper plates. This production smelled of Chloe. It smelled of image management. It smelled of spending money you did not have to impress people you did not like. I walked around the side of the house to the backyard. The murmur of conversation stopped for a split second as I appeared. Heads turned. I saw my great-aunt Martha, my cousins, and a few neighbors. And then I saw Grandpa. He was sitting at the head of the table in his wheelchair, looking small in a suit that hung loosely on his frame. His white hair was combed back, and his hands were resting on his lap. He looked like a prop in his own life. I walked straight to him, ignoring the eyes, ignoring my mother who was hovering near the drink station. "Grandpa," I said softly. He looked up. His eyes, usually cloudy with age, snapped into focus. They were sharp, clear. He reached out a hand, and I took it. His grip was surprisingly strong, the calloused hand of a carpenter who had spent 60 years building things that lasted. He pulled me down. It was an aggressive pull, forcing me to bend close to his face. He hugged me, his arm wrapping around my neck with a ferocity that surprised me. He smelled of Old Spice and peppermint. "You came," he whispered into my ear. His voice was rough, like sandpaper on wood. "I promised," I whispered back. "Good," he hissed, the sound barely audible over the jazz music playing from portable speakers. "I need you here to hear, and I need you to remember. Do not let them talk over me. Harper, I am listening, I promised." He released me, patting my hand. He leaned back in his chair, his face returning to a mask of benign senility. It was a seamless transition. If I hadn't felt the tension in his arm, I would have believed he was just a happy old man enjoying a party. "Harper," the voice was high-pitched and dripping with artificial sweetener. Chloe descended upon me. She was wearing a cream-colored dress that looked bridal, her hair in perfect beach waves. She held a glass of champagne in one hand and a microphone in the other, because of course she had rented a sound system for a backyard dinner. You made it, she exclaimed, loud enough for the entire yard to hear. She did not hug me. She just beamed at me with a terrifying intensity. We were so worried you wouldn't feel up to it. She turned to the guests, gesturing to me like I was a charity case she had successfully rehabilitated. Everyone, Harper is here, she announced. I know we were all giving her space while she worked through her things, but it is so good to have the family whole again. The narrative was being spun in real time, worked through her things. It was vague enough to imply anything mental breakdown, rehab, marital trouble. It positioned her as the benevolent sister welcoming back the broken sibling. Mom materialized at my elbow. She placed a hand on my shoulder, squeezing just a little too hard. You look tired, honey, she said, her voice pitched to carry to Aunt Martha standing nearby. Are you still having trouble sleeping? I told you that job is too much pressure. You take everything so personally. I am sleeping fine, Mom, I said, stepping out of her reach. I have never slept better. Well, you look pale, Mom insisted, refusing to let the sickly angle go. But it is okay. You are home now. We can take care of you. Just relax tonight. Do not worry about anything. We have handled all the details. I bet you have, I said. I looked around the yard. I saw the way my relatives were looking at me. Some with pity, clearly the recipients of Chloe's whisper campaign. Others, like my cousin Mike, looked at me with curiosity, waiting for the explosion. They knew the Castillos. They knew that if there was a dinner this fancy, there was a bill coming due. I did not take the bait. I did not defend myself. I did not scream that I was the most stable person in the zip code. I just smiled, a thin, tight smile, and walked over to the edge of the patio. Silence is a weapon. When you do not deny an accusation, people assume it is true. But when you do not react to an insult, people get nervous. They wonder what you know. I checked my watch. 5:15. Louis walked through the gate. He had parked separately. As we agreed, he was wearing a gray suit, looking every inch the corporate attorney. He did not come to me immediately. He stopped at the drink station, got a glass of water, and began to circle the perimeter. He was scanning the room. We made eye contact across the yard. He gave a barely perceptible nod. Target acquired. I followed his gaze. Standing near the back door, talking to my father, was a man I did not recognize. He was not a relative. He was not a neighbor. He was wearing a cheap black suit and a tie that was a shade too bright. He held a leather portfolio under his arm. He looked like every mid-level loan officer I had ever audited. My father looked sweaty. He was wiping his forehead with a napkin, nodding rapidly at whatever the man was saying. The man in the suit checked his watch. Looking impatient, I moved closer, pretending to admire the flower arrangements. It is just a formality, I heard the suit say. His voice was nasal. We have the notary on standby, but I need the signatures verified before we can notarize. The rate lock is good until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Mr. Castillo. After that, the points go up. We know, Dad said, his voice trembling. We are just waiting for the right moment. My father is old. We want him to eat first. If we do not have the ink tonight, I cannot guarantee the funding by Tuesday, the suit warned. I backed away. Funding by Tuesday. Rate lock expiring Monday morning. It was exactly what Louis and I had deduced. They were refinancing Grandpa's house, stripping the equity out of the only asset the family had left. And they needed Grandpa's signature and likely mine, as the co-trustee to push it through. I looked for Chloe. She was standing near the head of the table, texting furiously. Her face was a mask of panic. She typed, deleted, typed again. She looked at the suit, then at Grandpa, then at me. She caught me watching her, immediately. The smile snapped back into place. She shoved her phone into her pocket and clapped her hands. Okay, everyone, she shouted into the microphone. Please take your seats. Dinner is served. We have a lot to celebrate tonight. We moved to the table. It was assigned seating. Of course, Chloe had placed herself on Grandpa's right. Mom was on his left. Dad was next to Mom. They had placed me at the far end of the table, as far away from Grandpa as possible, sandwiched between Aunt Martha and my cousin Mike. Louis took the seat next to me. He placed his hand on my knee under the table. His grip was firm. "The guy in the suit," Louis whispered, barely moving his lips. I saw his badge when he leaned over. "Midwest Equity Solutions." "Predatory lender," I whispered back. "The worst kind," Louis confirmed. "High interest, hard money loans. They target distressed estates. If they are going to Midwest Equity, no reputable bank would touch them." The servers brought out the food, steaks, lobster tails, truffle mashed potatoes. It was obscene. This meal cost more than Grandpa spent on groceries in a year, and I knew exactly who was paying for it, or rather, whose credit was paying for it. I looked down at the steak knife. It was heavy, serrated. "So, Harper," Aunt Martha said, leaning in. She was a kind woman, but gossip was her oxygen. "Your mother says you have been taking some time off. Is everything okay with Louis?" She looked at Louis, searching for signs of divorce. "We are great, Aunt Martha," I said, cutting into my steak with surgical precision. "Actually, we are expanding." "Oh," her eyes lit up. "A baby." "No," I said. "Our legal team." Aunt Martha blinked, confused. I did not elaborate. The dinner dragged on. The humidity rose. The insects began to buzz around the string lights. My parents and Chloe were eating quickly, their eyes darting around the table. They were rushing. They wanted to get to the business portion of the evening. Chloe kept touching Grandpa's arm. "Is the steak okay? Grandpa, do you want water? Do you want wine?" Grandpa barely touched his food. He sat straight, his eyes moving from family member to family member. He was not eating, he was counting. I saw him look at Dad, who was chugging his third glass of red wine. He looked at Mom, who was picking at her lobster. He looked at Chloe, who was vibrating with nervous energy. And then he looked at me. He gave me a look that I will remember for the rest of my life. It was not the look of a victim. It was the look of a man who had checked the structural integrity of the bridge and decided to blow it up while everyone was standing on it. He tapped his glass with his spoon. Ting, ting, ting. The sound cut through the chatter. "Quiet, everyone," Chloe said, jumping up. "Grandpa wants to say a few words." She rushed to his side, adjusting the microphone stand she had set up next to him. "Here, Grandpa, just speak into this. Everyone wants to hear you." She looked at the crowd, her face glowing. "Grandpa has been thinking a lot about the future and about how much he loves this family, and he wanted to make a special announcement tonight about how we are going to move forward together." She looked at the suit, who was standing in the shadows of the porch. She nodded to him. This was it. This was the setup. Grandpa was supposed to say he was handing over the reins. He was supposed to say he trusted Robert and Linda to manage his affairs. He was supposed to validate the conservatorship in front of 20 witnesses so that when they went to court tomorrow, no one would object. Grandpa cleared his throat. The sound was amplified by the speakers, a deep, guttural rumble. He did not look at the note cards Chloe had placed in front of him. He pushed them aside with a trembling hand. "Family," Grandpa said. "We love you, Dad," Mom shouted from her seat, clapping her hands. "We love you so much." "Quiet, Linda." Grandpa said. The command was sharp. It was not the voice of a confused old man. It was the voice of the man who had run a job site for 40 years. Mom's mouth snapped shut. "I have been watching you all," Grandpa said. "I have been watching you eat. I have been watching you talk. And I have been watching you spend." The air in the backyard changed. The humidity seemed to spike. "Chloe," Grandpa said, turning his head slowly to look at my sister. Chloe froze, her smile wavering. "Yes, Grandpa." "You told me this dinner was a potluck," Grandpa said. Chloe's face went white. "I just wanted to make it nice for you. I wanted to surprise you." "A potluck," Grandpa repeated. "But I see catering trucks. I see waiters. I see steaks that cost $50 a pound." He looked out at the guests. My granddaughter tells me that she paid for this with her bonus, Grandpa said, but I know for a fact that she has not had a job in 6 months. A ripple of murmurs went through the table. Aunt Martha gasped. Grandpa, let's not do this now, Dad said, standing up, his chair scraping loudly against the patio stones. You are tired. Let's just go inside and sign the birthday cards. Sit down. Robert, Grandpa barked. Dad sat down. I am not tired, Grandpa said. I am awake. For the first time in 2 years. I am wide awake. He looked down the long table. He looked past the flowers. He looked past the candles. He locked eyes with me. Harper, he said. Yes, Grandpa, I said, my voice steady. You are the only one who didn't ask me for anything when you walked in, he said. Everyone else asked me how I was feeling, but they were really asking if I was weak enough to sign their papers. Chloe reached for the microphone. Okay, I think the heat is getting to him. Grandpa, let's get you some water. She tried to pull the mic away. Grandpa slammed his hand down on the table. The silverware jumped. I am not done, he roared. The feedback from the speakers screeched, causing everyone to wince. You invited Harper here because you need her, Grandpa said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. You told me she was sick. You told me she was unstable. You told me she stole money from me. He reached into his jacket pocket. My heart stopped. I thought he was having a heart attack, but he pulled out a piece of paper. It was crumpled. It was yellow. It was one of the letters I had written him. Mrs. Higgins brought me my mail, Grandpa said. She has been keeping it for me, because she saw my own daughter taking letters out of my mailbox and throwing them in the trash. He held up the letter. Harper didn't steal my money, Grandpa announced to the silent yard. She wrote to me every week, asking why I wouldn't talk to her. He turned to my mother. Mom was pale, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. You lied to me, Grandpa said. And tonight, you brought a shark into my backyard. He pointed a shaking finger at the man in the suit standing by the porch. Who is that? Robert, Grandpa asked. Is that a friend? Or is that the man who is going to take my house? The suit looked uncomfortable. He took a step back, sensing the deal was imploding. It is just a consultant, Dad, my father stammered. For estate planning. I have a plan for my estate, Grandpa said. He stood up. It was a struggle. His legs shook. He gripped the edge of the table. Louis started to rise to help him, but I put a hand on Louis's arm. Wait, let him do this. Grandpa stood tall. He looked at his family, the Leaches, the liars, the actors. My plan, Grandpa said, is to make sure that none of you get a single dime. Chloe dropped her glass. It hit the patio stones and shattered, the sound of breaking glass punctuating the sentence like a gunshot. Grandpa, you do not mean that, Chloe whispered, tears springing to her eyes, real tears this time, tears of financial terror. I mean every word, Grandpa said. And I invited Harper here tonight not to sign your loan. I invited her here to witness the eviction. He looked at me. Harper, he said, do you have the folder? I stood up. I picked up the red accordion folder from the ground. It felt light now. It felt righteous. I have it, Grandpa, I said. Good, he said. Then let's start the show. The chaos that followed Grandpa's announcement was not the explosive, cinematic kind. It was the messy, suffocating panic of people trying to put a lid back on a boiling pot. As soon as Grandpa asked for the folder, my mother lunged forward, not to attack, but to smother. She was suddenly holding a napkin to his face, dabbing at sweat that wasn't there, cooing loudly about heat stroke and exhaustion. He is confused, Mom announced to the table, her voice pitching up 2 octaves. It is the medication. He gets like this when his sugar is low. Dad, you need to lie down. My father stood up and practically bracketed Grandpa with his body, blocking him from the guests. Sorry, everyone. Show is over. Just a little spell. We are going to get him inside to the air conditioning. They began to wheel him toward the house. Grandpa did not fight them. He just held the red folder I had handed him tight against his chest, and he winked at me, a single, slow wink. "Harper, help us," Chloe snapped, grabbing my arm. "Do not just stand there gloating. Grab his water glass. We need to get him inside before he says something else crazy." I grabbed the glass, but not to help. I grabbed it to have a reason to follow them into the house. The guests were left murmuring in the yard, picking at their $50 steaks. I walked into the kitchen. The air inside was freezing, a stark contrast to the humidity of the garden. My parents wheeled Grandpa into the den and shut the door. I could hear Mom's voice through the wood, soothing and frantic, trying to talk him down from the ledge of truth he had just jumped off. Chloe did not go into the den. She marched straight past me, her heels clicking on the hardwood, and ducked into the laundry room near the back of the house. She pushed the door almost shut, leaving a 2-inch crack. I stood in the hallway. I placed the water glass on a side table. My training at the agency kicked in. When a subject separates from the group during an audit, it is usually to destroy evidence or to coordinate a story. I took off my shoes. I moved silently down the corridor, positioning myself just outside the laundry room door. Chloe was not crying. She was negotiating. "No, listen to me," she hissed into the phone. "The plan is still on. He just had a moment. He is 82. For God's sake, nobody's going to listen to his little outburst if we have the paperwork signed." There was a pause. The person on the other end was speaking loudly. "I know the deadline." Chloe's voice rose, then snapped back down to a whisper. "I know. 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. If the packet isn't uploaded to the portal by 9, we lose the lock. I get it. I am not stupid." I leaned closer. "Harper is here," Chloe said. Hearing my name in that dark, narrow hallway made the hair on my arms stand up. "She is in the house. No, she hasn't signed yet. She is being resistant, but she is here. That is the hard part. Once I get her in front of the notary, I can pressure her. I will tell her it is for his medical care. She has a savior complex. She will sign if she thinks it is life or death." My stomach turned. It was not just greed. It was a dissection of my personality. She had weaponized my empathy. "We just need her name on the co-borrower line," Chloe continued, her voice taking on a chilling practicality. "Her credit score is 780. I checked it on the monitoring app, with her as the guarantor. The underwriting software will approve the cash out instantly. It makes everything look legitimate. She is the puzzle piece that hides the debt-to-income ratio." I stepped back. I had heard enough. She is the puzzle piece that hides the debt-to-income ratio. They were not just refinancing. They were buried. They were drowning in so much debt that they needed my pristine financial history to act as a life raft. If I signed that paper, I wouldn't just be helping Grandpa. I would be attaching myself to a sinking ship. I would be liable for hundreds of thousands of dollars of new debt that they would inevitably default on. I retreated to the kitchen. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic rhythm that I forced to slow down. Breathe, analyze, execute. Louis came in through the back door. He looked calm, but his eyes were scanning the room for threats. He saw me standing by the refrigerator. "Where are they?" he asked quietly. "Parents are in the den gaslighting Grandpa," I said. "Chloe is in the laundry room trying to salvage a loan application that expires at 9 tomorrow morning." "I checked the docket again," Louis said, pulling out his phone. "It tracks. There is a hearing for the conservatorship at 10, but the deadline Chloe is talking about must be the funding cutoff for a hard money loan. Those lenders usually require the wire to be set up first thing in the morning. She said my credit score is the anchor," I told him. "She checked it. She knows I have a 780. "That confirms the identity theft wasn't just for free stuff," Louis said, his jaw tightening. "They opened that credit card to monitor your score, to see when you were ripe for the harvest." Just then, the back door opened again. My cousin Mike walked in, holding a beer. He looked uncomfortable, like he had walked into a funeral by mistake. "Hey," Mike said, looking between me and Louis. "Intense speech out there, huh?" Grandpa likes to be dramatic, I said, keeping my face neutral. Yeah, well, Mike shrugged. Uncle Robert told my dad that it is just stress. He said they are about to come into a big liquidity event. Said Grandpa is finally doing the right thing and transferring the estate to the people who actually took care of him. Is that what he said? Lewis asked, his tone casual. Yeah, Robert was bragging about it last week. Said he was going to pay off his boat and buy a condo in Florida. Said the papers were just a formality because the ungrateful ones, sorry. Harper. His words were out of the picture. Interesting, I said. Thanks, Mike. Mike wandered off toward the bathroom. I looked at Lewis. They are already spending the money, I said. They have mentally cashed the check. That is why they are so desperate. If this falls through, they do not just lose the house, they lose the future they have already bought on credit. The door to the den opened. My father stepped out. He looked disheveled. He saw me and straightened his tie, putting on a shaky smile. He is resting, Dad said. He is calm now. Harper, why don't you come in? He wants to see you. Just you. We should probably clear the air before we discuss the logistics. Logistics, I repeated. The care plan, Dad corrected quickly. The plan for his medical expenses. That is what this is all about. I walked toward the den. Lewis moved to follow me. Just Harper, Dad said, stepping in front of Lewis. He was specific. He wants a moment with his granddaughter. I will be right outside, Lewis said to me. Door stays open. Closed, Dad insisted. He needs quiet. I looked at Lewis. I nodded. I can handle this. I walked into the den. It was dimly lit, smelling of old paper and leather. Grandpa was sitting in his leather armchair, the red folder on his lap. My mother was standing by the window, looking out at the yard with her arms crossed. She looked angry. Leave us, Linda, Grandpa said. Dad, I do not think. Get out, Grandpa said. Mom glared at me as she walked past, a look of pure venom. She slammed the door behind her. I was alone with him, or so I thought. Grandpa pointed to the corner of the room, near the bookshelf, where the shadows were deepest. I am not senile. Harper, Grandpa said. His voice was strong again. And I am not alone. A figure stepped out of the shadows. It was a woman, tall, wearing a charcoal pantsuit. She had short gray hair and glasses that caught the light. Hello, Harper, she said. I recognized her instantly. It was Aunt Corinne. Corinne? I gasped. I thought you were in Chicago. I drove down this morning, Corinne said. Dad called me. He told me about the dinner and the papers they wanted him to sign. You knew? I looked at Grandpa. I knew 2 years ago, Grandpa said. He looked down at his hands. I knew when the money disappeared from the account. I saw the statements. Harper, the bank mailed them to me. Not just you. I saw the Sephora charges. I saw the plane tickets. But you never said anything, I whispered. Why? Because I wanted to see who would tell me the truth, Grandpa said. He looked up, and his eyes were wet. I waited. I waited for Chloe to apologize. I waited for your mother to explain. And I waited for you to tell on them. I didn't want to hurt you, I said. I didn't want you to know they were stealing from you. So you took the blame, Grandpa said. You let them paint you as the villain. You let them drive you away. You protected them. Harper, just like you always do. I stopped protecting them, I said. That is why I am here tonight. I know, Grandpa said. He tapped the red folder. I saw what you brought, but we need more than evidence. Harper, we need a trap. Corinne stepped forward. Here's the situation. Robert and Linda have a notary coming in 30 minutes. They also have a representative from Midwest Equity Solutions waiting in the kitchen. They plan to have Dad sign a quitclaim deed transferring the house to a new LLC controlled by Robert, and then immediately sign the mortgage documents for the hard money loan. They are doing it tonight, I asked. They have to. Corinne said, the conservatorship hearing is tomorrow. If they get the house transferred tonight, the conservatorship becomes moot for the property. They bypass the court oversight. But they need me, I said. The trust? Exactly, Corinne said. They have forged a resignation of trustee document for you. They are going to ask you to sign it, claiming it is just a formality to let them manage Dad's medical bills. If you sign that, you are off the trust, and they can do whatever they want. They are going to lie to me, I said. They are going to try, Grandpa said, but we are going to let them put the papers on the table. We are going to let them explain it. We are going to let them commit the fraud in front of witnesses. Who is the witness? I asked. The notary works for them, Corinne smiled. It was a shark's smile. The notary works for them, she said. But the woman who is going to walk through that door in 10 minutes to verify signatures works for the State Attorney General's office. She is a friend of mine, and she is wearing a wire. I looked at Grandpa. He sat there, the patriarch of a collapsing dynasty, looking more powerful than I had ever seen him. I am tired of the lies, Harper, Grandpa said softly. I am tired of being the thing they fight over. Tonight, we end it, but I need you to be strong. They are going to beg. They are going to cry. They are going to say I am confused. I am ready, I said. Good, Grandpa said, because when we open this door, the play enters the final act, and I am not the one who is going to be written out of the script. He handed me the red folder back. Keep this, he said. When they ask for your signature, you give them this instead. I took the folder. One more thing, I said. I heard Chloe on the phone. She said my credit score is the key. They might try to put me on the loan without telling me. Just slip the page in. Then we read every page, Corinne said, and we catch them in the act. I walked to the door. I put my hand on the knob. I looked back at Grandpa and Corinne. Are we ready? I asked. Open the door, Grandpa commanded. I opened the door to the den. The hallway was empty, but I could hear the hum of voices from the dining room. My family was waiting. The notary was waiting. The predator in the cheap suit was waiting. They thought they were ambushing a victim. They had no idea they were walking into a sting operation. I walked out, my head high, the red folder tucked under my arm like a weapon. I found Louis waiting right where he said he would be. It is time, I whispered to him. Is he okay? Louis asked. He is better than okay, I said. He is the mastermind. We walked into the dining room together. The table had been cleared. A fresh white cloth was laid out. In the center, sitting like an altar to greed, was a stack of legal documents 2 inches thick. Chloe looked up as I entered. She smiled, offering me a pen. Finally, she said, let's get this over with. I looked at the pen, I looked at the papers, and then I looked at the clock. Yes, I said. Let's. Grandpa Everett rolled his wheelchair back to the head of the long farmhouse table. But he did not sit in it. He locked the brakes and used the armrest to push himself up to a standing position. The hush that fell over the backyard was instant. The crickets seemed to stop chirping out of respect. The stack of legal documents sat in the center of the table like a centerpiece made of dynamite. Beside it, the notary, a woman with nervous eyes and a heavy stamp, clicked her pen repeatedly. The man from Midwest Equity Solutions. The suit hovered near the cooler, looking less like a financial consultant and more like a getaway driver waiting for the signal. Please, everyone, sit, Chloe commanded, though her voice lacked its earlier sparkle. She gestured for me to take my seat at the far end of the table, but I remained standing next to Louis. Grandpa is going to say a few words about the trust, and then we will get the boring paperwork out of the way so we can cut the cake. There is no cake, Grandpa said. His voice carried across the lawn, clear and devoid of the tremor everyone expected. And the paperwork is not boring. Chloe, it is life-changing. Exactly, Mom chimed in. Clapping her hands together with a manic energy, she stood up, raising her wine glass. It is life-changing because it secures our future. It ensures that Dad is taken care of and that the house stays in the family. It is a celebration of continuity. She looked at me. her eyes pleading and threatening all at once. "Harper, honey, why don't you come sit by me? I know you've been feeling overwhelmed lately. I want you close." It was a masterful stroke. In one sentence, she had framed the legal transfer as a benevolent act and positioned me as the unstable element that needed comforting. The guests, Aunt Martha, Cousin Mike, the neighbors looked at me with a mixture of pity and wariness. They saw the prodigal daughter returning, perhaps medicated, perhaps broken, being welcomed back by the saintly mother. "I am fine standing, Mom," I said. Chloe stepped forward, placing a hand on the stack of papers. "Grandpa, let's just sign first." "Okay, the notary is on the clock. We can do speeches after." "The notary can wait," Grandpa said. He looked at the woman. "You are paid by the hour, aren't you?" "Yes, sir," the notary squeaked. "Then you wait," Grandpa snapped. He turned his gaze to the crowd. "My granddaughter Chloe says this is about family. She says we are here to support each other." "We are," Chloe insisted. "Look at us, all of us together." "Then I have a question," Grandpa said. He turned slowly, painfully, until he was facing me directly. "Harper." "Yes, Grandpa." "Why did you leave?" The question hung in the humid air. It was simple, direct, and devastating. Chloe's mouth opened to interrupt, but Grandpa held up a hand. "Not you. Chloe. Harper. Tell these people. Tell your Aunt Martha. Tell your cousin Mike. Why did you vanish for 2 years? Why did you stop calling me? Was it because you were sick? Was it because you were struggling, as your mother tells everyone?" I looked at the faces around the table. They were waiting for a tearful confession. They were waiting for me to talk about depression or a midlife crisis. I took a breath. I channeled the cold, sterile air of the audit room. "I did not leave because I was sick," I said. My voice was level, projecting clearly to the back row. "I left because on November 14th, 2 years ago, I logged into the joint checking account I established to pay for Grandpa's physical therapy. I had deposited $500 every 2 weeks for 6 months. The balance should have been over $11,000. Chloe dropped her fork. It clattered against the china. "Harper, stop," Mom hissed. "Do not do this." "The balance was $42, I continued, ignoring her. The money had been transferred out, $3,000 to a crypto exchange, $600 to Delta Airlines, $200 to Sephora, $400 to a casino. A gasp rippled through the guests. Aunt Martha's hand flew to her mouth. "When I confronted my family," I said, looking directly at my father, "they did not apologize. They did not offer to pay it back. They told me I was selfish for counting the pennies. They told me that asking for accountability was destroying the family. So I removed my name from the account, and because I refused to be an accomplice to the theft. They cut me off from my grandfather." "Liar," Chloe screamed. The veneer of the perfect hostess shattered. She slammed her hands on the table. "That is a lie. She is making it up. She is jealous because I am the one who takes care of Grandpa. I am the one who is here every day. You are here every day because you do not have a job." "Chloe," I said calmly. "She is unstable," Mom shouted, standing up and knocking her chair over. "I told you all. She has been having episodes. She invents things to hurt us. Louis put her up to this." She pointed a shaking finger at my husband. "He is controlling her. He wants the inheritance for himself." Dad stood up too, his face red. "Harper, that is enough. You are ruining the dinner. You are embarrassing yourself." It was the classic 3-pronged attack. Deny. Attack the victim. Blame the spouse. It had worked on me for 30 years. It had worked because I was afraid of the noise. I was afraid of the scene, but I wasn't afraid anymore. "I am not embarrassed, Dad," I said, "and I am not inventing anything." Louis stepped forward. He carried the red accordion folder in his left hand. He walked to the table, moving past the stunned notary, and placed a large manila envelope on top of the stack of loan documents. "Exhibit A," Louis said. His voice was the deep, resonant baritone of a man who argues in federal court. Credit report for Harper Castillo Nichols, generated yesterday. He opened the envelope and slid the papers across the table toward Aunt Martha. 3 months ago, a credit card was opened in Harper's name, Lewis explained, treating the dinner guests like a jury. The mailing address on the account is 104 Maple Avenue. This house? It is a mistake, Mom cried. Junk mail. We get junk mail all the time. The card was activated, Lewis continued, his voice relentless. And it was used, $4,800 in charges, Best Buy, Liquor Barn, local grocery stores. Unless Harper has been sleepwalking and driving 2 hours to buy vodka in her parents' neighborhood, someone at this table committed identity theft. This is ridiculous, the suit said, stepping out of the shadows. Mr. Castillo, if there is a legal dispute, we cannot proceed with the signing. I am leaving. No, Chloe lunged at the suit, grabbing his arm. No, wait, do not leave. It is just, she is lying. These are fake papers. She printed them out to sabotage us. She spun around to face me, her eyes wild. You are a psycho, Chloe shrieked. You come here, to Grandpa's house, and you try to frame us. You have been spying on us. You and your creepy husband. You probably hacked our phones. You are the criminal. Harper, you are the one recording everyone like a stalker. She looked at the guests, desperate to find an angle that stuck. She has cameras, Chloe yelled. She records her own family. Who does that? Only a sick person records their own mother and father. She is trying to entrap us. The guests looked uneasy. The accusation of recording people was ugly. It felt invasive. Mom seized on it. Yes. Mom sobbed, tears flowing again. She records us. She treats us like lab rats. It is perverse. How can you trust a word she says when she violates our privacy like that? I watch them. I watch them twist the reality, turning their victimization of me into my victimization of them. They were good at it. They were world class. You are right, I said. The volume of my voice dropped, forcing everyone to lean in. I do have a recording. I pulled my phone out of my clutch. I held it up. The screen was bright in the twilight. You want to talk about privacy? I asked. Let's talk about the 12 minutes you spent on my front porch 4 days ago. Let's talk about the rehearsal. Do not, Chloe whispered. Her face went slack. Harper, do not. You said I was unstable, I said. You said I was making it up. You said your tears were real. I tapped the screen. I had connected it to the Bluetooth speaker system Chloe had rented for her speeches. The connection chimed a cheerful ding, and then the voice of my mother filled the backyard. Is this too much? Do I look tired enough? Chloe, I do not want her to think I dressed up. The silence in the yard was absolute. Even the crickets seemed to be listening. Then came Chloe's voice, amplified, crisp, and commanding. You look fine. Mom, stop fidgeting. If you fidget, you look nervous. You need to look broken. Mom froze. She stood there, her mouth open, the real tears on her face suddenly looking like a costume she could not take off. My father's voice boomed next. We miss you, sweetheart. We just miss you so much. Then Chloe again. Too stiff. Drop your shoulders. You are a grieving father. Try it again. Soften the we miss you. I saw Cousin Mike look at his uncle. He looked disgusted. Aunt Martha was staring at the tablecloth, her face burning red. The recording played on, the sound of Mom practicing her hyperventilation, the sound of her fake sobbing. And then, the final nail in the coffin, Chloe's voice, sneering and cold. We are not lying. Mom, we are managing her. She just needs to believe we regret it. It does not need to be real. It just needs to work. It does not need to be real. The words echoed off the siding of the house. I hit pause. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. It was the silence of a magic trick being revealed. The wires exposed. The trapdoor opened. Chloe stood there, stripped naked in front of the people she had tried so hard to impress. There was no spin that could fix this. There was no misunderstanding. We had all heard the direction. We had all heard the artifice. That, I said, pointing to the speaker, is the family love you are talking about, Chloe. That is the unity you wanted Grandpa to pay for. Chloe stammered. We just wanted you to come. You wanted my signature, I said. Because you maxed out the credit card you opened in my name, and you need to refinance this house to pay off your debts before the fraud alert hits. Get out, Dad whispered. He was looking at the ground. No, Grandpa said. Grandpa stood up again. He looked stronger now, as if the truth had fed him. He picked up the stack of loan documents from the table. He looked at the suit. You? Grandpa said. The suit held up his hands. I did not know, sir. I was told the family was in agreement. I am withdrawing the application. You are not withdrawing it, Grandpa said. I am rejecting it. He ripped the top page of the document in half. The sound was loud, satisfying. He ripped it again. He threw the pieces onto the grass. And you, Grandpa said, turning to the notary. Go home. The notary grabbed her stamp and practically ran toward the side gate. Then Grandpa looked at his son. Robert, you tried to put me in a conservatorship. You filed the papers. Dad didn't answer. I filed an objection. A voice came from the shadows. Aunt Corinne stepped into the light. She walked to the table, her heels sinking slightly into the soft grass. She looked at Robert and Linda with the cold, professional disdain of a prosecutor. Hello, Robert, Corinne said. Hello, Linda. Corinne? Dad looked like he was seeing a ghost. What are you doing here? I am representing my client, Corinne said, nodding to Grandpa. And I am here to clarify the legal situation for everyone present. She placed a briefcase on the table and snapped it open. The recording Harper just played is admissible to demonstrate intent to defraud, Corinne stated, her voice clipping along like a ticker tape. It proves that the invitation to this dinner was a pretext for financial manipulation. Furthermore, the metadata on the video file confirms the date and time, contradicting your claims that you haven't seen Harper. She pulled out a file. As for the credit card, Corinne continued, looking at Chloe, that is 18 U.S. Code Section 1028, identity fraud. It carries a penalty of up to 15 years in prison, and the attempt to coerce an elderly person into signing a mortgage they do not understand, that is elder abuse. In this state, that is a mandatory reporting event. Chloe started to cry. Real, ugly, hiccuping sobs. I just wanted to fix it. I was going to pay it back. With what? Corinne asked. With the money you were going to steal from your grandfather's equity. We are family, Mom screamed. But it sounded weak, like a slogan that had lost its meaning. You cannot send us to jail. We are family. You ceased to be family when you treated your father like a bank and your daughter like a cosigner, Corinne said. She turned to the guests. This dinner is over, Corinne announced. If you are a witness to these events, you may be contacted for a deposition. I suggest you leave now before the police arrive to take a report on the credit card fraud. The guests did not need to be told twice. Aunt Martha grabbed her purse and fled. Cousin Mike gave me a nod, a look of newfound respect mixed with terror, and followed her. The backyard emptied in under 2 minutes. The only people left were the Castillos, the real ones, and the fake ones. I looked at my parents and my sister. They stood amidst the wreckage of their fancy dinner, the string lights shining down on their humiliation. They looked small. They looked pathetic. You ruined everything, Chloe whispered to me, her mascara running down her face. Are you happy? I looked at the Ring video on my phone, then at the shredded papers on the grass. I didn't ruin anything. Chloe, I said. I just turned on the lights. The backyard was now a graveyard of abandoned luxury. Half-eaten steaks sat congealing on the white tablecloths, and the string lights buzzed overhead, illuminating a party that had disintegrated into a crime scene. The guests had fled, scattering like birds startled by a gunshot. leaving only the core cast of this tragedy standing on the trampled grass. My parents and Chloe were clustered together near the drink station, looking like survivors of a shipwreck who had washed up on a hostile shore. They were pale, shivering despite the heat, their eyes darting between me, Grandpa, and Aunt Corinne. "It is over," my father muttered, loosening his tie with a trembling hand. "Everyone is gone. You humiliated us. Harper, I hope you are satisfied." "We are not done," Grandpa said. He did not sit down. He stood like a statue carved from judgment, his gaze fixed on the shadows near the back porch. He raised a hand and signaled. "Mr. Sterling," Grandpa called out. "You can come out now." The back door opened. A man stepped out. He was not the cheap, sweaty, predatory lender who had tried to get a signature earlier. This man was dressed in a charcoal suit that cost more than my first car. He carried a leather briefcase and wore the expression of a man who had seen every variety of human greed and found them all boring. "Who is that?" Mom whispered, grabbing Dad's arm. "This," Aunt Corinne said, stepping forward to stand beside the man, "is Arthur Sterling. He is a forensic accountant and a compliance officer for the bank where Dad holds his primary assets. And he is here because Dad asked him to be." Grandpa looked at his family. "You thought this dinner was your idea, Chloe. You thought you were managing me. You thought you were setting the stage to trick a senile old man and his estranged granddaughter." He shook his head slowly. "I knew about the credit card 3 days after you opened it," Grandpa said. "I knew about the loan application the day you filed it. Mr. Sterling flagged it. He called me. He asked if I wanted to press charges immediately." Chloe let out a strangled sound, a whimper of pure terror. "I told him to wait," Grandpa continued. "I told him to wait for the legacy dinner, because I wanted to give you one last chance. I wanted to see if you would look me in the eye and ask for help, or if you would look me in the eye and lie." He looked at the wreckage of the evening. "You lied," Grandpa said. "You lied to the neighbors, you lied to the notary, and you tried to make Harper a criminal to cover your tracks." Mr. Sterling stepped forward. He placed his briefcase on the table. Right next to the shredded remains of the loan application, he snapped the latches open. The sound was loud, like 2 pistol shots in the quiet night. He pulled out a document. It was protected in a plastic sleeve. "I have here a consent to encumber form, Mr. Sterling said. His voice was dry, professional, devoid of emotion. "It bears the signature of Everett Castillo and the co-signature of Harper Castillo Nichols. It was submitted electronically to the lender's portal 48 hours ago to initiate the underwriting process." He held it up. "Mrs. Nichols." "Mr. Sterling said, looking at me. "Can you please step forward?" I walked to the table. I felt Louis right behind me, a silent guardian. I looked at the document. The signature at the bottom read, Harper Castillo. But the loops were too wide. The slant was wrong. It was a caricature of my name. "Is this your signature?" Mr. Sterling asked. "No," I said clearly. "I have not signed a document using my maiden name in 3 years, and I have never seen this paper before tonight." "I can confirm that," Louis added, stepping up. I ran a trace on the digital submission packet. The IP address that uploaded this document originated from a residential router at 104 Maple Avenue. At the time of the upload, Harper was at our home, 2 towns over. Her phone's GPS data corroborates her location. She was nowhere near the device that signed this. Mr. Sterling nodded. He pulled out a red stamp. He stamped the document. Fraudulent. "That concludes the verification," Mr. Sterling said. "We have a positive confirmation of forgery." Chloe collapsed. It was not a figure of speech. Her knees simply gave out, and she sank to the patio stones, burying her face in her hands. "I am sorry," she wailed. "I had to. The interest rates on the credit cards were killing me. I just needed a bridge loan. I was going to pay it back as soon as my crypto wallet rebounded. I swear. Grandpa, I wasn't trying to steal the house. I was trying to save us." Save us, Mom shouted. Suddenly pivoting, she dropped to her knees beside Chloe, wrapping her arms around her. She is a child. Dad. She made a mistake. She was trying to help the family. We have been drowning. Robert made some bad investments, and we didn't want to worry you. We were trying to protect you. My father stood there, looking at his wife and daughter on the ground. For the first time all night, the mask of the arrogant patriarch slipped completely, revealing a frightened, aging man who had run out of road. We just wanted to get through the rough patch, Dad said. His voice was hollow. We thought if we could just access the equity, we could clear the debts. We could start over. We didn't want to hurt anyone. We just wanted to survive. That is a lie, Grandpa said. The authority in his voice silenced the sobbing. You did not want to survive, Grandpa said, looking down at his son. You wanted to maintain a lifestyle you could not afford, and you wanted Harper to pay for it. You wanted to drag her down into your hole so that you could stand on her shoulders and keep your heads above water. He pointed a finger at me. Look at her, Grandpa commanded. She worked. She saved. She built a life, and you punished her for it. You called her cold because she wouldn't let you set her on fire to keep yourselves warm. He turned to Mr. Sterling. Execute the protocols. Mr. Sterling nodded. He pulled 3 thick envelopes from his briefcase. He handed one to my father, one to my mother, and dropped the last one on the ground next to Chloe. Effective immediately, Mr. Sterling announced. All powers of attorney previously granted to Robert and Linda Castillo are revoked. The living trust has been amended. The primary trustee is now a corporate fiduciary appointed by the bank. No family member, including Mrs. Nichols, has access to the principal assets. You locked the money away, Mom whispered, looking at the envelope in her hands. I protected it, Grandpa corrected. From you. Furthermore, Corinne added, stepping in with her legal pad. Mr. Sterling has filed a sworn affidavit of forgery regarding the loan documents and the credit card application. We are not filing criminal charges with the police tonight. Provided that you sign these admission of guilt statements, these statements will be held in escrow. She looked at Chloe with a gaze that could cut glass. If you ever attempt to open a line of credit in Harper's name again, or if you attempt to contact Dad without the supervision of his court-appointed guardian, these admissions go directly to the district attorney. Do you understand? This is your one and only get-out-of-jail card? Use it wisely. Chloe nodded frantically, unable to speak. She grabbed the pen Corinne offered and signed the paper with a shaking hand. Mom and Dad followed suit, signing their own admissions. It was the total surrender of a regime that had ruled by guilt for too long. Grandpa watched them sign. He looked tired now. The adrenaline that had sustained him through the confrontation was fading, leaving behind the heavy sadness of a father who had just realized his children were strangers. Pack your things, Grandpa said to my parents. Not the house. The house belongs to the trust now. You have 30 days to vacate. Mr. Sterling will arrange for a rental allowance for 6 months. After that, you are on your own. Dad, my father whispered, 30 days. You have 30 days, Grandpa repeated. That is more notice than you gave Harper when you stole her savings. He turned away from them. He wheeled his chair toward me. Louis stepped aside, giving us space. Grandpa reached out and took my hand. His skin was paper thin, but his grip was still warm. Harper, he said, I am here. Grandpa, I said. You did good, he said softly. You stood tall. I was worried that when they started crying, you would fold. I was worried they had broken you too much. They didn't break me, I said. They just sharpened me. I know, Grandpa said. He looked at the red folder I was still holding. You can put that away now. You do not need to prove anything anymore. Grandpa, I said, feeling a lump form in my throat. I am sorry it had to be like this. I am sorry you had to see them like that. I needed to see it, Grandpa said. I needed to know that when I go, I am leaving the truth behind, not a lie. He squeezed my hand. You did not take revenge tonight. Harper, he said, The words hung in the air. A benediction. Revenge is bitter. What you did was justice. You just stopped being silent. And that is a very different thing. He looked at Louis. Take her home, son. She has had a long night. And take this cake home. 2. I wasn't joking about the cake. It cost $80. I laughed. It was a wet, shaky sound. But it was real. Goodbye, Grandpa, I said. I will call you on Sunday. On your real phone. I will answer, he promised. On the first ring. Louis and I walked out of the backyard. We did not look back at my parents, who were standing in the ruins of their scheme, holding their eviction notices. We did not look back at Chloe, who was still weeping on the ground. We walked through the side gate, past the catering van that was packing up, and down the quiet suburban street to my car. The night air felt different. It was no longer heavy. It felt clear. We got into the car. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, just gripping the wheel. Louis reached over and covered my hand with his. It is done, he said. It is done, I repeated. I started the engine. I drove away from the house on Maple Avenue. I drove away from the guilt trips. I drove away from the "we miss you" rehearsals. I drove away from the version of myself that had spent 30 years apologizing for existing. 2 weeks later, life returned to a rhythm that was boring and beautiful. The mail arrived. There were no summons. There were no past due notices. There was a letter from the credit bureau confirming that the fraudulent account had been removed from my file. I sat on my front porch, my real porch, in my quiet townhouse and drank a cup of coffee. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Grandpa. Mrs. Higgins says hello, and the new nurse is nice. She doesn't let your father in the driveway. Love you. I smiled. I typed back, love you too. I looked at the ring camera mounted by the door. It was silent. No motion detected. No drama recording. Just the empty, peaceful street and the life I had fought to keep safe. I had closed the door on them, but for the first time in my life, I had opened the door to myself. Thank you so much for listening to Harper's story. It is a long journey from being the good daughter to becoming the woman who stands her ground. But I hope this story reminded you that your voice is your most powerful weapon. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening from a quiet porch in Ohio, a busy train in Tokyo, or maybe a cozy room in London? Please leave a comment below and let me know your location and what you thought of Harper's Justice if you enjoyed this story. Please make sure to subscribe to the Juliet Revenge Stories channel. Hit that like button and press the hype button to help this story reach more people who might need a little inspiration to stand up for themselves. Your support means the world to me. Stay strong and never let anyone write your script for you.